I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Larry Sharpe. He is a commentator. He's the host of Sharpe the Right Way on YouTube. And he has also been a Libertarian candidate for governor for the state of New York. What's going on, Larry? It's been a minute.
It has been a minute, but sadly, I wear my governor's shirt today to show that I did run before, but it was not a good run. I got my butt kicked both times, but I still kept fighting at least. I did.
This is true. So, Larry, I have to get into what happened at the Libertarian National Convention because it was quite a story this time around. I don't think I've ever heard this much about the Libertarian National Convention before, but this year it was very popular, in particular because RFK Jr. received a nomination from the Libertarian Party, and then also Donald Trump spoke at the Libertarian Party National Convention. I want to start with RFK Jr. because there was a little bit of confusion. I think there was the announcement on social media that RFK Jr. received the Libertarian nomination. And some people on social media assumed that that meant he was the Libertarian nominee. He was the nominee for the party. So could you explain to people, like, what exactly happened there? Why did the party itself decide to extend a nomination to RFK Jr.? And why do you think some people were confused that he was the nominee for the party?
What most people don't understand is how the Libertarian Party actually works, the internal workings of it. I won't go crazy, but just to make you understand, basically, at our convention, that day is how we decide who our nominee will be. It does not matter. It doesn't matter what you do, who you are, irrelevant. That is the day that we decide. During that time, anyone can be nominated from the floor. You can nominate Donald Trump. You can nominate you. It does not matter. Anyone can be nominated from the floor. Anyone. And there are certain rules. You have to somehow be registered in some way to the Libertarian Party in some way, meaning at a local level or national level. And people have to agree that you should do it. Someone has to also agree. Can't be one person seconded. And you have to accept it. So literally, Sabrina, if I wanted to, I could have gone down there and I could have said, hey, I nominate Sabrina for president, to be president of the United States for our party, be our nominee. I could have done so. And if you had accepted, and if you had paid $25 to a Libertarian Party someplace in the country, you could run for our presidential nomination. It is literally that simple. It's very simple to do. So there are, within the Libertarian Party, it's probably about 10% is my guess. There's a chunk of Libertarians who want RFK to be our nominee. And the reason why, some of them actually like RFK, some don't, but some want it because he's popular. And what many people don't know is what all third parties struggle with. And you see it with Jill Stein, you see it with Dr. Cornel West, you see it with RFK Jr., is ballot access. The ballot access laws are horribly terrible. They keep us out. They are prohibitive. They are an embarrassment to our nation. Someone like RFK Jr., if we put him on our line, he'll get the appropriate number of votes to give us ballot access. So some people wanted him just to be on, whether he was Libertarian or not, just so we get the votes, so we'd have ballot access, so we could run our party in certain states. That was what people wanted. The problem is with the Libertarians, not that many Libertarians actually wanted him to be our nominee. So he ran for the nomination that day. And that's it. That's how that works. He ran for the nomination that day, along with about 7 or 8 other Libertarians. At the end of the day, Chase Oliver was the one selected.
But why do you think some people assume that with that announcement, because it was all over Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it these days?
People don't understand. That's why. He was nominated. That's true. Someone from the floor said, I want to nominate Robert Kennedy Jr. to be our presidential candidate. That is an accurate statement. However, it doesn't hold the same meaning as it does in other parties. But the statement itself was accurate. But it doesn't mean he was our nominee for the general election.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. There was also the phone call, the epic phone call video that happened from Angela, where she was calling RFK Jr. And that's
because, again, to get nominated to be there, you have to accept it. So she called him. Do you accept it? He went, oh, okay, yeah. That's what happened, basically. He didn't ask for it. His people didn't ask for it. People in the Libertarian Party, a small percentage, obviously he lost the first round, a small percentage wanted him. So, but you can't just do it. You have to accept. If I had nominated you, Sabrina, somebody would have had to call you and say, hey, Sabrina, you accept this nomination. And if you would have said no, you can't be in the running. And then we do basically a runoff vote. We run to see who gets 50% plus one. Whoever does not get that in the first round, the bottom 5% removed, you do another round. And you keep voting until someone gets 50% plus one. It is a modified form of kind of like ranked choice voting.
So why do you think it seems like the majority did not want RFK Jr. As Libertarian nominee? Why do you think he lost in the first round?
Well, two things. One, he didn't really ask for it. So it wasn't like he had people. Again, for our party, if you want to win the nomination, you have to bring delegates to the convention. There are about 1,000 delegates. We had about 900 or so. About 1,000 delegates usually will show up. They're selected from each state. They all come and show up. RFK Jr. didn't want this thing. So he didn't spend the time, money, and energy to collect enough delegates to then show up at the convention to then vote for him. Random people can't vote. You have to be selected by your state as a delegate, and you show up at the convention. Well, he wasn't ready for this. He didn't do it. He didn't want it. He didn't ask for it. So there was no one to do so. Everyone else who was there, who was actually running, had been to state conventions, had tried to coerce people to show up, to vote for them, had done phone calls. Hey, Sabrina, you're going to be in D.C. Do me a favor, vote for my guy, right? I was whipping the floor too. So you whip the floor. That's how it works. Again, most people don't know how this works. It's not a common way of electing your presidential nominee. And that's why he didn't get it.
It's just weird because in interviews, that was not the way he made it sound. There were multiple interviews that he did where he said that he was already talking to people in the Libertarian Party.
Hold on, let's be clear. This happened starting last year. There was a time when he was considering becoming the Libertarian nominee. That is true. There was a time. He then announced probably 2 months ago, I'm going to guess, in that area. No, he was flirting with it. So was Justin Amash in 2020. He flirted with it too and then said no. People flirt with the idea of the Libertarian Party often because usually we have the most and best ballot access in the entire country. And we still do this time. We still will have the best ballot access. In the past 8 years, except this year, we've had ballot access in all 50 states. This year, we will not have that. But in the past, we always had that. And the hardest thing to do, as I mentioned, is to get ballot access. Jesse Ventura said it. Jesse Ventura said, I'm not running for the Green Party because I can't get ballot access. You get me ballot access in 50 states, I'll run. He said that openly. You can't get it is virtually impossible to get ballot access in 50 states. It will cost you millions upon millions of dollars. RFK Jr. now is being sued in many states. They're trying to sue him off the ballot because they do not want it. And American people don't know this. Many people tell me all the time, if you guys would run better candidates, how can I? When literally you will throw me off the ballot. I dropped personally in my last 2022 race. I raised $500,000. I spent $400,000 trying to get ballot access and got sued off the ballot by the Republicans. Literally sued off the ballot. I did 8 separate lawsuits, 4 federal and 4 state. Dropped 6 figures. They spent 6 figures in lawyers getting rid of me, and they got me off the ballot. Judges across the country every single year spend time throwing people off the ballot, utterly unconstitutionally, utterly wrong. It's absolutely bad, makes no sense. Do it all the time. That's how Obama got his seat in Chicago. In Illinois, he sued his opponent off the ballot. That is a normal thing. He did it in New York. Republicans sued their own off the ballot. And judges, shame on every judge, I hope they're watching, who would dare throw someone off the ballot because of a party attack. Shame on you. Parties are not part of the Constitution. Parties, we were warned about parties back from George Washington. They're a terrible idea. And what we have right now is a system to where two private companies control all of our elections. That's the reality of what we have right now. And they are not obligated, and federal courts have already said so. Democrats, Republicans are not obligated to give us free or fair elections within their parties at all. Bernie Sanders found that out the hard way. I'm sorry, you got me going, Sabrina. I apologize.
No, it's fine. No, I was curious just because I will say Jill Stein was able to get on the ballot in over 40 states when she ran for president in 2016.
Yes.
She's
40,
dealing with her own lawsuits.
Yeah.
As well. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow because she's being sued again. So is RFK Jr. I'm going to talk about both of those tomorrow.
I have been on with Greens too, by the way, like Howie Hawkins and I, when we ran at the same time in 2018, we sued together, right? I've sued with Green parties many times. I jump on the Green Party with me, Constitution Party. Third parties need to, when it comes to this type of action, we should be working together, because if we don't fix the system, none of us win. None of us win.
Why do you think that some people, in particular, when I think about the Libertarian Party, the first thing that comes to mind to me is anti-war. That's just the first thing I think about with the Libertarian Party. So why do you think that some people thought RFK Jr. would be a good choice, other than the fact that he has the Kennedy name?
No, I think I explained it. The reality of it is what Kennedy does well when it comes to libertarians, he doesn't pretend to be one of us. He's not. What he does when he comes to us is he says that he talks the things that we agree upon, which is why he got a warm reception, right? He comes in and says what he agrees upon. He agrees on medical freedom. He agrees on farm freedom. He agrees on ending all the problems we have with our food system, chronic disease. He agrees those things that we do. Libertarians also agree. He doesn't talk about things that he doesn't agree with, which is why it's a smart move for him, right? If I were to go to the Green Party, I wouldn't talk about things that we don't agree upon, right? I would talk about things that we agree upon. And often when I've hung out with single issue voters, anti-war is a common denominator with libertarians, Greens, even the LaRouche people. They're all like anti-war. So he speaks about common denominators. Trump got booed horribly at our convention because he didn't do that. Trump came in and said, I'm great. I'm a libertarian. Vote for me. And we booed him horribly because he said he was one of us. Most people wanted Bobby for two reasons. And there's logic to this, to be forward. In fact, I would argue that if Bobby Kennedy is the only guy on your ballot in your state, whether you agree with him or not, you should vote for him. And why would I say that? Third parties need to break this system, right? If you've got someone else on your ballot, you don't like Bobby Kennedy, I get it. But in my case in New York State, I'm only going to have Bobby on my ballot except for Trump and Biden. That's all I'm going to have. No one else got ballot access. So if you have options, take your options. If you don't, Bobby's the right answer. Why? Because I would rather break the system so that others can get in than anything else. And I think many libertarians were like, I want to get in. I want to break this system. And that's what they thought. And I get it. The logic isn't that many libertarians thought that Bobby was libertarian. That isn't the logic. They were like, no. We need him so that we can get ballot access, so that we can run our candidates, because without it, we can't. There will be no libertarians on the ballot in New York State this year. None. Zero. Not one. Zero. None. That is how bad it is. In fact, there'll be no Greens also in New York State. None. There'll be no LaRouche, not one LaRoucheite. There'll be no Constitution Party. None. None of them will be in the ballot. We are shut out in the fourth largest state in the union. So you can see why people would say, hey, I don't care. I'll take RFK. Get me ballot access so I can fight in my state. We can't fight in our states anymore.
Right. But don't you think it's a bad look for the party when you have someone, if you have someone who is...
It's a worse look when you can't vote for anybody. What, are you kidding me?
Right. But wait, but Larry, let me finish. Don't you think it is a bad look for the party when you have someone that is pursuing the idea, or was pursuing the idea of running with the Libertarian Party, a party that is staunchly anti-war, and they are out there having this rhetoric against the Palestinian people, calling them the most pampered people in the world. They're on Twitter actually telling people, give Israel everything that they need to finish the job. Don't you think that's a bad look?
He lost the first round.
Right, but it was still entertained. Like that's the point.
Okay.
The whole point of the third
is not the point at all.
But the whole point of third parties, Larry, the whole point of third parties is that you're not supposed to be like the duopoly. If you're going to repeat the same methods and the same strategies and the same mindset that's happening in the two-party system, what is the point of the third party?
Okay, I need to be clear on this. He didn't win. He lost the first round. It is utterly unfair for anyone to say the Libertarians brought on RFK Jr. to be a Libertarian. He did not. Of course, what we did, which is what you should do too, in every party, is allow anyone who wants to be nominated that the people want to nominate, which we did. We didn't stop him from being nominated. We followed our bylaws. He was nominated, and he lost first round. You asked two separate questions. One was, is it a bad look? No, he didn't get nominated. So clearly Libertarians didn't want him. But why would they? I explained why 10% of the Libertarian Party would want him. It was a mechanical issue to get ballot access. And for those people, they would say, I don't care. I need to save my state. I don't care. I can understand that logic. You may disagree with it, and I understand that, but it's not illogical for someone to go, I can't run in my state. I sue. I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can't do it. To hell with it. I'll grab this guy so I can run. That's not crazy at all. Again, it didn't happen, but that's not crazy at all.
But the question I was asking is, don't you think that's a bad look for the party? If they're not agreeing with the party
If he had won, maybe, but he didn't. Okay, hold on. So let me be clear. All right. There have been terrible people who have run for the Green Party, who have run for the nomination of the Green Party, who've run for the nomination of the Republican Party, who've run for the nomination of the Democratic Party. Are they now judged by everybody who ran for the party, for the nomination? No. They are judged by who wins the nomination. And you should judge us by who wins the nomination.
No, I judge you by the intentions. Like, so for example, I had the same criticism about Howie Hawkins running through the Green Party. I had the same criticism about Howie Hawkins. So this isn't like just an attack. Like, I'm not trying to attack the Libertarian Party. Yeah. I said the same thing about Howie Hawkins. Why would you have this guy running, knowing what he's saying when it comes to war, knowing like the war rhetoric that was coming from Howie Hawkins? I had that same criticism. I've had Green Party candidates on this show where I vented to them the same way, my frustrations, because it is a bad look in my opinion, because again, you're supposed to break the duopoly. You're not supposed to continue their faults. So that's just my take on that. That's my thing on the RFK Jr.
I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying, it's unfair. Here's what I'm saying is unfair. Howie Hawkins actually won the nomination of the Green Party.
I had that criticism before he even won the nomination.
And what I would say, if he didn't win the nomination, say he just ran and did not win, I would feel, this is my opinion, if he had run and not won, I would think that that's unfair. People can run for a nomination. The question is, does the party agree or not? But because somebody wants to run for a nomination, so the question is, did the party agree or not? That's the critical piece, right? Howard Stern tried to become a libertarian. He's not. But it doesn't mean that every libertarian is Howard Stern. Right? It means that he ran and he did not get the nomination. That's all I'm saying, right? And you asked me specifically, why would somebody want someone popular? Out of desperation. That is why somebody would, and about 10% did. They wanted out of desperation. I'm explaining why. That's all I'm saying. Some parties, some people in the party, without question, are tired of losing and failing, and they get desperate, and they want somebody to bring the party home and get ballot access when we fail constantly. That's all I'm saying. I hope that was clear, at least, if you disagree. I hope it's at least clear.
Well, so with Gary Johnson, for example, didn't Gary Johnson like break records through the Libertarian Party when he ran?
He did. I wish he'd run again. Absolutely. I love Gary Johnson. I was his surrogate in the media many times. I wish he'd run again. 100%. I love Gary Johnson. I came into the Libertarian Party because of Gary Johnson in 2012, 12 years ago. Big fan. I love Gary Johnson. To be very forward, one of the reasons, and this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? One of the reasons why the Green Party and the Libertarian Party doesn't get much talent to come in and run is because our infrastructure is broken and because we don't have ballot access like we used to have. We used to have ballot access. We don't anymore. When we don't have ballot access and don't have infrastructure, talented people don't want to run with us. They want to run with Democrats or run Republicans because they have a chance at winning. And that's their issue. So it becomes chicken and egg. So some people I think you saw it with the Green Party. The Greens thought that Cornel West was going to be their savior. I think they thought that when he first said it. That's what they believed. Well, did they think he was the best candidate? Probably not, but they did think, oh my God, now we can become popular. We can now get our 2 or 3% in our state that we need, and we now can build infrastructure out, and we can now do things. I think many people in the Green Party believe that. I think libertarians fall for the same thing. You know, when you are constantly losing, constantly failing, I think people do try to make things happen. And you may disagree, I get it, but that's an issue.
Let's pivot to Donald Trump, though. Because I think the big takeaway from Donald Trump's appearance at the Libertarian National Convention is that he was booed. And I want to hear a little bit about that. Why do you think people booed him?
Well, the problem is, to be full with you, I was worried when I saw we brought Vivek Ramaswamy, he spoke, Donald Trump spoke, and RFK Jr. spoke. And to be forward, and I said it publicly, I was a bit worried. I thought, oh my God, this could be a disaster. I thought people might think we're Republican light or something. And too many people already think we're basically Republicans. And we're not. It's just not true. But it doesn't matter. It's an image that a lot of people have of the Libertarian Party. I get it. So I was worried. I thought, oh my God, the media is just going to show him with libertarians and say that libertarians support Trump or something like that. I was worried. But it actually went very well. I was very happy. He came up and he was Trump. He came up and said, I'm your savior. I'm great. I'm libertarian. I'm going to do all these things. And we were like, no, you're not. Libertarians care about the debt tremendously. You know that. We are all about ending the Fed. We can't stand the national debt. It's a big thing. He's the biggest debt spender there was. Way worse. We hate about war. He was still bombing people just like Biden, just like Obama, just like Bush. He was bombing them too. So we looked at him and like, no, you're just like all the rest of them. No, we don't see any difference in you and anybody else. Now, the advantage is, I said, what Vivek did something good too. Vivek didn't say he was libertarian. When Vivek showed up, he said, I used to be libertarian, but I'm not anymore. Let me tell you where we agree. And we like that. Anyone, if you come to us and go, let me tell you where we agree, we like to say, oh, good. Thank you, Vivek. We're not voting for you, but thank you. That was nice. We were happy. RFK Jr. came and said, let me tell you where we agree. Thank you. That was amazing. Happy. It's awesome. We're not voting for you. Clearly, you lost the nomination, but thank you for coming. No booze. Trump walked in thinking he owned the place. Trump walked in saying, I'm your only hope to win, blah, 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 all that stuff. And we said, boo, get out of here. We don't need you. So that's why it went that way. He did not do what the other two guys did, right? If Diane Sayer, if it happened to Diane Sayer, she runs here in New York. She will sometimes go to libertarian events. And what does she talk about? She talks about anti-war, which we're anti-war. And we go, yay, thank you, Diane. We're happy to come. She's not a libertarian. She's not running as a libertarian, but we love her because she comes in and speaks about the things that we agree upon. Single issue coalitions, when it comes to the third party, all third party, is critical. And if we can get them together to push certain agendas, I think we can actually make some change in the country. So I think that's good, but Trump didn't get that. Trump thought, I'm the cool guy, come vote for me, and he got booed. Booed horribly.
Why? What do you think? What was he hoping? What do you think he was hoping to get out of that appearance? And why do you feel Trump was invited to speak at the convention? Or was he invited, or did he invite himself?
He was. Oh my God, no, we invite everybody. And the woman who runs the LNC is a woman named Angela McArdle. Angela McArdle runs the Libertarian National Convention. She is our chair. And she spent a lot of time, trying her best to do what she thought was right. And in that vein, she thought inviting lots of people would bring press. And the only people she invited Biden too. She invited everybody. And the people who said yes was Trump, Vivek, and RFK Jr. She just said, yes, okay, you're coming. And again, it was a gamble, but it did bring so much press. You're talking to me about it, right? Because it happened. It worked, right? It did work. People talked about it. People hear us. Hopefully we'll get us more press in the future. And it was a gamble, but it absolutely worked. It was to get more press, to get more eyeballs on our convention, and it totally worked.
Do you think? What do you think is the strategy here to try to get if Donald Trump were to win, or if Joe Biden, I guess, would have come as well?
Okay. Yes.
Try to get libertarians in his cabinet.
What Trump wants, and this is the thing that people don't realize, or some people are beginning to realize, this is the year for third parties. And whether people like Bobby Kennedy Jr. or not, he is the reason. He's the reason. And people go, but I don't like Bobby. Doesn't matter. He's the reason. Nobody cares about third parties until some big name runs as third party, whether that was Jesse Ventura in the 90s or whether that's RFK now. Big names matter. I know some people get mad. No, absolutely true. That's why I've spoken more about ballot access in the last year than every single libertarian's ever spoken about in the past 50 years combined. And it's all because Bobby Kennedy has trouble getting on the ballot. That's the reason. They don't care about me. They don't care about you. They care about names like Bobby Kennedy. And as much as that sucks, it's true. So him coming, this is the year. What does that mean? I want to grab as many bodies as I can get because third parties are going to decide this. This is the first time in our country that the largest group of voters is actually unaffiliated voters, not members of the Republican or Democratic Party. Third parties, everything. So where would you go? You want to go to the largest third party, which is Libertarian Party. We're the largest of all the third parties. We are the largest. We're still small, obviously, but of the small parties, we are the largest. We have the most ballot access. We have the most infrastructure, and we're inviting you. Why wouldn't you go? If I was running, I would go too. If I was Biden, I would have sent somebody. I probably wouldn't have gone if I was Biden, but I might have sent somebody to go because if I get to go there and talk about issues that I care about, that we align with, you'll get some people to say yes. I am sure that some people in the Libertarian Party are going to vote for Bobby Kennedy Jr. I'm sure someone. They're not going to have Libertarian on their ballot, like me. I won't have one on my ballot. I'd vote for Bobby Kennedy Jr. Of course I would. No one else is on my ballot. Of course I would. Right? Some people would have voted for whoever else would have shown up. Agree if Jill Stein would have. She was invited too. If Jill Stein would have shown up, there'd been people who would have voted for her. Right? Or Cornel West. Cornel West came to Libertarian Party of California. He was actually in a panel. I moderated the panel. For those of you who care, if you want to, you can go to my Larry Sharpe YouTube page, type in Cornel West. You can see it. It was about an hour panel. And we loved him there because he spoke about what we cared about. He spoke about ending the war on drugs. He talked about prison reform. He talked about criminal justice reform, which libertarians are all about. He spoke about what we agreed upon, and we loved it. He got a standing ovation. Cornel West got a standing ovation from the Libertarian Party of California because he spoke about what we like. So that means, again, there's some libertarians who aren't going to have Libertarian on the ballot. They're going to see Cornel West, and they're going to vote for him. And that's why you go to these types of spaces, to get as many of those votes as possible. If I was them, I would go too.
What do you think about the statement that Trump made when he said, do you guys want to continue to get like 3% or do you want to win?
It shows he doesn't know us. We never win. It's not like we win, right? I mean, we never win, of course. I mean, to be forward, if the Libertarian Party only wanted to make impact only and didn't care about anything, to be forward, we would have put RFK Jr. on our ballot. We would have. If we didn't care about anything else, if we just numbers, we would have put him on our ballot, of course. But that's not what we're about. You know this. You're a third-party person too. Third-party people, if we wanted to win, we wouldn't be third party. We'd be Democrats or Republicans. If we wanted just to get power, we'd be one of the two, right? We'd be one of the two. The reality of it is we know we're going to lose. And for him to say, well, you lose. Yeah, and? Right? Yeah, and? So what? So he didn't get that. He is accustomed to dealing with Democrats, Republicans who always think about winning. That's the issue. That's what it's about.
I saw a video from Pasta. Pasta was at the Libertarian National Convention, and yes. I saw a little quick interview that he did with Thomas Massie. Yep. And this is another question I have. Like, what do you think about libertarians like Thomas Massie, who they're libertarian, but he's a part of the Republican Party? Don't you think that someone like Thomas Massie, considering that he tends to have a pretty large constituency. I think he said he won got like 70% approval or whatever 100%. From his constituents. Why can't he just be a libertarian in Congress?
This is exactly the issue that we talk about all the time, right? And this is chicken and egg. We had a libertarian in Congress. His name was Justin Amash. We had him, and then he was very funny. He's like, I can't make anything happen. So he left. He couldn't make anything happen. The problem is when you become a third party, you have to be able to make things happen. Now, could Massie now become a libertarian? Maybe, but there's a second problem people don't realize. In Kentucky and many states, they have what's called straight ticket voting. And it's, again, totally unconstitutional. But if you live in Kentucky, it's like, you know what I'm talking about. You walk in and you basically click Republican, and you now vote for every Republican. Yes. That's called straight ticket voting. Another horribly unconstitutional system that crushes third parties that people don't know about. Yes. So if you're a third party, the average person who walks in, a Democrat, Republicans, who they are, most people are, and walk in and go Democrat, walk in and go Republican, they're done. They walk out. They don't even see who's on the ballot. No chance. So if he does that, he'll lose to the Republican because he's in a very Republican district. They'll walk in, click Republican, assume he's one of them, he'll lose. That's why he can't do it. It's impossible. He will lose because of straight ticket voting. And again, most people don't know what that is. That's how that works in many states. The system is set up to make sure third parties never win. Now, what has to happen? If Massey could do something like, by the way, maybe run for president one day, well, if we have 50 state ballot access, we would take him in a heartbeat. Massey at his heart is obviously libertarian, but he also wants to win and make impact. And he does that by being a Republican. I wish that wasn't true. I wish it wasn't true. But sadly for him, it is. I get it. Not everybody can fight the fight the way you and I fight it. Some of them have to fight it by being part of the establishment.
He's someone I might be interested in talking to because he's been very vocal about pushing back against giving foreign aid, like just very vocal, regardless if his party leadership says, no, we are going to give this aid to Ukraine or we're going to give this aid to Israel. He's been very vocal about just pushing back against that. He's been very vocal about being pro free speech and actually meaning that. And not putting forth legislation that he knows is against free speech. So I feel like on those issues, he's pretty like rock solid. But what I noticed with that interview that he had with Pasta, I noticed that when Pasta tried to make the connection to, what's happening in the countries abroad and why people are coming here from those countries, and because of the foreign policy strategies and imperialism from the United States, it seemed like he didn't make that connection. So that's someone I would be interested in talking to.
He might not have, to be fully. And if you guys want to check it out, I was actually on Pasta's show also. You can check out his page, and we talked about the same exact issue. A lot of people think that libertarians are the Republicans who call themselves libertarians. They're not. Right? At one time, Ben Shapiro called himself a libertarian. He's not. Yes, he's not. Right? Libertarians are actually guys like me. And believe it or not, what people don't get is we actually have a lot in common with people on the right and the left. We have areas where we completely, in fact, we have areas where we go further than people on the left sometimes, right? Further on people on the right sometimes. So we do overlap on certain things. It's very true. The power of the LP, Libertarian Party, is it gives you a place to go, particularly if you can run locally. Libertarians, I always say, don't win, but we win locally all the time. We do. It's very true. In New York State in 2018, when I did have ballot access, in 2019, we had 107 local victories in 2019. And you might go, is that a lot? We had 0. We're from 0 to 107 in 1 year. And then New York State then changed all the ballot access laws in the middle of a cycle during lockdowns. And that's how we lost everything. That was the Democrats doing that. Then when I fought back against it in 2022, the Republicans sued me. So both sides got rid of me. It didn't really matter either way. So I know people get upset about third parties, but the system is broken against us. And there are times when people say, I don't care. I want somebody. And would we take a Thomas Massey? 100%. 100% we take him. We take Justin Amash. We take Thomas Massey. Of course we would. We take him. Yes. There's a lot of libertarians actually who would also take, he's a very popular guy, he's the governor of Colorado, Jared Polis. Yep, a lot of libertarians like him too. So he probably also could win if he wanted to run for president, something like that. Anyone like that, we would love that. We would love all those things, right? People often think that libertarians are about big business. Not at all. We are only about small business, independent property rights. And every policy, if anyone cares about my policies, all the time, I speak about policies about helping individual people. And when Bobby Kennedy came, he talked about small farms, right? He talked about local farmers, right? We were all like clapping. Yes, homesteaders. We love that stuff. So I do think it's good that we have an LP. I think it does still provide a very valuable resource, but it's also something else. Libertarians are like herding cats. Spike Cohen said this. He said it's like herding cats on meth, and you're on meth, and everybody's on meth. That's a quote from Spike Cohen. So I love that quote, but that's not mine. And he's right. But you know what? I would rather have it that way. I know some people were mad with people who actually tried to run for our nomination. But I'm happy we had an open nomination process. I'm not mad at that. I'm happy we did. It showed that anybody can come in and we would pick the person who we thought was the right person. I think that's it. So, by the way, if your chat wants to give me some questions, I'm happy to take any questions or comments from your chat. I don't mind at all.
Be careful with that one.
No. Look, I've been doing this for a long time. They can get mad at me, say things they want. No worries. Absolutely. They can yell at me. I don't mind at all. Whatever they want. All good. I'm happy to take them.
What do you think about the comments that have been made about the actual, like the Libertarian nominee, which is Chase Oliver? I saw him do a third party debate. I thought he did a phenomenal job along with the other candidates there as well. What do you think about the criticism that has been delivered more so from people on the right, calling him a woke candidate?
Yeah, the Libertarian Party really has fallen into, I think, the same world that most of mainstream America has, which is the culture war, right? Most of mainstream America fights the culture war and doesn't bother thinking about the issues. They go, I'm on team blue and team blue says X, therefore team red is bad, or I'm on team red and then whatever team red says is right, whatever team blue is bad, and that's it. They fight culture wars. We had a similar situation within a Libertarian Party. It started around 2020-ish in that area. I'm not exactly sure exactly when that area. And what wound up happening is the left and right side of the party wanted to fight a culture war. And they did. And one side won, and the other side is attacking the side that won. In 2022, there was a kind of a takeover from the more right-leaning side of the party. The left attacked them mercilessly. Now the left, Chase Oliver, has been elected, and the right attacks him mercilessly. So it is horrible infighting, which I can't stand. I try to stay above it to the best of my ability, but it just hurts the party. We're so small, and the civil war within our small party makes it extra deadly. It's not helpful. What I told both sides when it happens is, why are you burning down the house that you're going to buy back in 2 years? And that's the problem. They're going to buy back the house to you. No one can run Libertarian Party. People don't realize this. The Libertarian Party is run fully by volunteers. Fully. Our chair is not getting a salary. The Libertarian National Committee gets no salary. It's all volunteers. That's all it is. It's just volunteers. Give me a super
Larry, be careful what you wish for, because thank you for the super chat. Laugh. Libertarians are spoiled children. Ask Larry how long he relied on earning minimum wage to exist and how he pulled himself up by his bootstraps to get out of poverty. I know this story, but for those who don't, go ahead, Larry.
I will tell Laugh 66 what is rad. Libertarians are spoiled children. We lose all the time. None of us are spoiled. Please tell me one person who's been running things who's libertarian in America. None. Nobody. All the damage that you see in the UK, if you are British, I see a pound there, in America, you see, has all been done by Republicans and Democrats. Or what do you guys got? Your left and your right, what do you have, your Tories and your Labor, whatever your thing is over there? The same thing. The two-party system has been beating you up. And if you are struggling, it's not because libertarians. You're struggling because your two-party system put you in this spot. That's number one. Number two, how did I do it? I grew up poor in the Bronx, smart guy. I was adopted. My dad died when I was 11. I was broke. I had to join the military so I could pay for my college. So I survived many years before I pulled myself up on my bootstraps. And now, yes, I am a consultant and I do make good money now. Yes, I do. And I proudly do that 100%. So yeah, I'm not ashamed at all of my background that I came from the Bronx and that I got my butt kicked as a youngster, or that I got my butt kicked as a professional. In 2008, 2009, the crash crushed me. I got devastated, had to fire all my employees, shut my business down. It was a devastation for me. And I built myself back up from then. It does not mean that everybody can or should. To be very clear, I'm not a bootstrap guy. I'm a freedom guy. If you want to have a job and work, you should. If you want to have a business, you should be able to. We should be able to use entrepreneurship to grow. That is how my family pulled itself out of the Bronx. It's how many of my friends did. But unfortunately now, because of Democrats, Republicans, there is corporate capture all over the place. And where I grew up in the Bronx, it's a true story. Back in the 70s, I'm telling you how old I am now. Back in the 70s when I grew up, there was a pizza joint called Joe's Pizza. Joe's Pizza was owned by a local guy who lived there. When he retired, he gave it to his daughter. It became Paula's Pizza. Now it's a Subway. And the guy who owns it lives in Connecticut. That's how our areas are now. Sadly, we don't own our own neighborhoods anymore. We don't own them. And it's terrible. Libertarians would never allow that to happen. And every policy I ever made for governor was never about that. It was always about helping people and to grow to the best of their ability. Always.
All right. I got one more for you. And then I want to ask you about what happened in Argentina. Thank you, Natalie. Are libertarians in favor of worker co-ops? Good question, Natalie. Larry?
100%. Yes, it is all about ownership. 100%. Right? People think that libertarians are against unions or against co-ops. Not at all. Now, I'm on record with saying this, right? The reality of it is if you want to have a co-op, of course you should have a co-op. Ownership is better. If we want people to grow, you either want one of two things, if not both. Strong unions and or people owning their own labor, or some combination, whatever works best for you, right? Some people don't want ownership in a company or business. They want to just get paid. Okay, then strong union, good idea. Some people say, no, I want to own the means of production. Awesome, then you should be able to have a co-op, 100%. I actually had a policy in New York State. You might think Democrats in New York State, far left, as they say, we know that's not true, but they say far left, they don't talk about co-ops. I literally had a plan in New York State that what you could do is you give everyone a 60 or 90-day window. If any company is going to go out of business for any reason, you keep the vultures at bay for 90 days, allowing time for workers to purchase the business if they want to, right? They could purchase the business if they want to purchase it, they may. And you might go, Larry, where do they get the money from? Public bank. Public bank allows for local co-op banking, which is literally credit unions. Those credit unions can support people purchasing co-ops, and the government, which I'm going to give them money anyway. I'm going to give you the workers' comp, or I'm going to give you, your unemployment. Instead, I'll give it up front completely. Take it all up front. That can now be matched with the money coming from the public bank or the credit union by the business. Have the workers own it. No worries whatsoever. I've never heard a Democrat in my state ever bring up anything like that, ever. I did. My exception with unions. Public sector unions negotiate with the wrong people. Public sector unions are bad for one reason, not because unions are bad, because they negotiate with the governor. Wrong person to negotiate with. The governor's not his money. Public sector unions should have all of their contracts, all of them, absolutely okayed through ballot initiatives, the people who they service. Let the people do that. And you're negotiating. Be as strong or as weak as you want as a union. Labor should be able to fight in the business, in the free market, just like anybody else. And I'll add one more thing. Most libertarians also know that in today's world, you have to have antitrust laws. Just have to. You have to break up monopolies. Monopolies destroy all of this. If the government's going to do anything, if it's going to do anything, it has to break up monopolies. Its goal has to be to support the little guy and to support individual property rights and individual rights. I hope I answered that question.
Thank you so much. I want to bring up your attention to this about Argentina. Milei, who's been a very controversial figure in Argentina, obviously. Yep. Kim Iverson pointed this out earlier today. We are going to change Argentina. We are going to make it the most liberal country in the world. Mr. Milei told a conference in Buenos Aires. The reforms not only cut taxes, but they cut pensions. They left thousands suddenly without jobs, and they privatized public resources, if anyone is wondering why the country has broken out in riots. Argentina needs shock reform, which is always painful. Milei's measures are yet to prove positive. Since he's been in office, inflation has soared to 300%, poverty has increased to 55%, and the recession has deepened. Maybe things need to get worse before they get better, or maybe anarcho-capitalism will fail. So that is, she's referring to what happened earlier today. Riots are spreading across Argentina's capital after Milei's controversial tax reforms passed the nation's Senate in a closely contested vote yesterday. I want to get your opinion about that, what's happening in Argentina.
I know it's very tough, and I'm going to say what people are not going to like, but I'm going to say it anyway because I believe it. We have to wait. That's what I can say. We have to wait. Argentina was in a terrible spot no matter what, and Milei may fail, and he may succeed. It was going to be painful no matter what. I don't want to judge this until it's been probably about a year. until we can go back and go, let's see what actually happened. And I know people don't like it. They want to jump on board. But here's the problem. When you just jump and change, very often you make things a whole lot worse. I want to let it just work. Let the Argentinians find their problems, fill their issues. The last years have not worked for them at all. It was 300% inflation before he got there. They were a disaster before he got there. So it wasn't like he walked in and it all happened. It was already happening. There's certain things that are positive, though. There are certain things that are positive. There is a surplus. Has not been one. Yes, there's riots. We've had riots here in America, too. And they were sometimes good and sometimes bad. The market is rallying. That's something that's happening. And the Senate approved it. So, like, it wasn't like he just did it by stamping it. He did not. He did it. He went through his Congress. I think it's the Senate. No, it's the Senate, I think, there. Whatever he has. His legislature. He went through his legislature, and they said, yes, this is not him, being a tyrant. His legislature agreed to this, and he's cut his government, and he has a surplus. I think you have to see if it works. I know I'm sure your chat is yelling at me right now, but it doesn't matter. It's what I honestly feel. I think we have to do it that way.
I don't think we should tell people in poverty that they need to wait.
We shouldn't tell them anything. They should. I should be telling Argentinians nothing. They should be dealing with it. I'm not concerned about that at all. Let them deal with it the way they want to. I am not telling them. Look, you can talk about all kind of problems that they have. They have to fix it. American intervention has not panned out well for almost everybody we've intervened with. So I have an idea.
I agree with you about intervention. I don't think
I don't want to intervene at all.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think the right message to send is they just need to wait it out.
No, from us. What we should do, just wait it out, let it go. Let them handle their issues. That's what I'm saying. We should not be petitioning them, trying to stop them, trying to anything. Let them deal with their own issues. That's the issue. Okay. We have our own problems. We have tons of problems here in our own country that we need to be working about. They'll deal with their issues. What I say is good luck to him. I hope he succeeds. That is what I will say. That's my view. I hope he succeeds.
Okay, I misunderstood that. There's another one here for you, Larry. Greg Bruce says, recently Massey said essentially that U.S. foreign policy can't be blamed for illegal immigration because it's all Biden's fault. That was what I was talking about with what he said to Pasta during the interview. Curious, Larry. Yeah, that's what
absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. No. The vast majority of our immigration problems are because of our foreign policy. And the second reason is because of our horrible laws and the way we deal with our border in general, right? So our foreign policy isn't the only reason. It's the biggest reason. There are other reasons why immigration is collapsing and terrible, but that's the number one reason. We are destabilizing the world and then wondering why people come here, right? But also our laws are bad on top of it, right? First off, we should not have asylum laws. Those are all stupid. Those are from the Cold War. They shouldn't exist. If you want to come to our country, you should be able to come on a certain type of visa. We can pick the visas we want, come to a port of entry, put together an actual. I'm going to say what's going to make your audience mad, but it's still correct. I'm still right when I say this on this one. I know I'm right. The answer is across this country right now, across this world, right now, literally thousands upon thousands of people cross borders in businesses all the time. People aren't being killed. People aren't being attacked. People aren't robbing, except for extortion, that type of stuff, right? But people aren't being physically robbed. None of that. Why can't we follow those same rules for someone comes into an Ellis Island type environment here in America? Literally have a recruiting company. Literally open up a bunch of Ellis Islands. Come on in. Okay, what do you need? Who are you? Background check. What's going on? All those things. What states opt in? Here's where you go. Boom, done. And then how to get paid? The same way recruiters get paid now. They get paid by the company who hires them. Done deal. Life is good. You could easily set that up, and that would ease 50% of our immigration overnight. And of course, stop bombing people and overthrowing their governments and everything else that we do. So you combine those two, you could fix our problem in a year. You would see a massive change.
One more for you, Larry, from Reuben. What's
Please.
The process from having ran GOP for U.S. House to Libertarian socially? I got bigger after primaries with a margin called the Fed per se concept bill. Later found out I don't know if this is Ron Paul or Rand Paul, but R. Paul from District Texas 14, or maybe that's not either one of them.
That would be Ron. That would be Ron. Ron Paul's from Texas. Rand Paul's from Kentucky.
Okay.
This would be Ron Paul.
So I guess he's asking, what's the process from having ran GOP for U.S. House to Libertarian socially?
It's all you have to do to be voted. If you want to run Libertarian, is go to your local state chapter, say you want to run locally, and they will probably put you on. We don't have that many people who want to run Libertarian, sadly. I wish we had more. So the odds are very high that they would actually want to do this. So yes, shouldn't be hard at all.
This is interesting. I wonder if someone like Robbie would be interested in running. Robbie Salve.
He's not a libertarian.
He is a libertarian.
He's a Republican who pretends to be a libertarian. He's not a libertarian.
What?
Robbie Salve wouldn't know a libertarian if it bit him on the ass. He has no idea. He's not a libertarian. Stop that. Stop.
He calls himself a libertarian on the show.
All the time. But when's the last time you heard him mention one libertarian candidate on his show? One. Thank you. Never. He never mentions them ever. He never has them on. He never talks about them. Never says he's voting for. Nothing. Ever. Have you ever seen from Reason Magazine, who he works for, have you ever seen a positive piece of anything from them talking about a candidate who's running for office, a libertarian? Ever seen a positive piece from them? You can't remember. They hate the Libertarian Party. Reason does nothing but takes a lot. Reason will go out of its way to make Libertarian Party feel terrible. I literally never talk to Reason. Ever.
I thought Reason was a libertarian show.
Oh, Reason's Republicans who hate Trump. Reason's Republicans who hate Trump. No, they're not libertarians. Stop that. No, they're not. When's the last time you saw? When's the last time you saw them do anything positive about any libertarian running for office? They will take their time. They'll have Thomas Massey talk about him all day long. He's Republican. They'll talk about Ron Paul all day long. He's Republican. They'll talk about Rand Paul. They'll have Rand Paul on that show, on the Rising show, every other week. He's Republican. Of course.
I'll be damned.
Of course.
Well, I guess I have a lot to learn still when it comes to.
Absolutely.
Don't come for me, Robbie.
Yeah. Somebody actually in your chat says he remembers that pizza joint.
Yeah, that's New York Varsity. Yeah.
Yes, he remembers it. I'm not making it up. That's a true story. It went from Joe's Pizza to Paula's Pizza to a Subway. Yes, it's a true story.
Interesting.
That's why I grew up by Yankee Stadium. For those of you who know, that's where I grew up. I grew up by Yankee Stadium is where I grew up. Yes.
Awesome. And this is from Roger Meadows. Thank you, Roger. That's the right of first refusal law, Larry. Yep.
Yes. And I think that's an important piece. I think we really have to start. One of the major reasons why co-ops aren't taken seriously in America is not because they work or don't work. It is because bankers in the finance community believe they don't work because they won't have control over the actual company. So when you start to make it to when you start seeing more success, more people will back it, right? And that's why you have to have something like credit unions to begin that process. The fighting against co-ops is much more of a cultural issue than it is a financial issue, believe it or not. It's a cultural issue first. If people start seeing it, then they'll actually start doing it. And again, as long as it's voluntary, I think it's great. The idea is the Amish can happily survive in a libertarian community, in a libertarian world, but the Amish cannot survive in an authoritarian world. In the authoritarian world, the minorities are the first people who are attacked. In the libertarian world, minorities are the first people who are protected.
Interesting. Well, Larry, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
You can just Google Larry Sharpe. I'm on all the things. I'm on everything from Twitter to YouTube to Facebook to MeWe, all the things. You name it, I'm on it. Larry Sharpe on all the things. If you do care about some of my policy issues, if you are a policy wonk, if you are, I actually did 8 hours straight of policy to save New York in 2022, 8 hours straight. It is time-stamped if you care. How to fix New York State. I didn't take a bathroom break or eat or drink or anything. I just sat there and talked about policy. I am one of the rare people who is a libertarian who doesn't only talk about just, ideas and philosophy. I talk a lot about actual policies. I was on Joe Rogan. If anyone's seen my Joe Rogan interview, you can. Larry Sharpe, Joe Rogan. Talked about him in 2018. Glenn Beck a bunch of times in 2018. So hopefully you will see me soon.
All right, Larry, thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Bye. All right, guys, that was Larry Sharpe. Interesting conversation. This is why it's really good to, again, bring on people that you don't agree with on everything, right? Because it does make the conversation more interesting there. But I have to keep that in mind about Robbie now. To keep that in mind. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we still have news stories to discuss as well. I want to go ahead and give a shout out to patrons. We'll show the thumbnail and then we'll shout out some of you in the chat as well. So first and foremost, thank you to all of you who are Sabby patrons, keeping the fort on around me. Thank you so much. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. There's also Sabbies. Don't forget about them. And of course, members. All of their names are listed here. And you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen on the ticker. And I believe I shouted out the newbies last stream. So thank you guys so much. I'll have to update that when I get a chance. All right, let's go ahead and show that beautiful thumbnail so you can see what else we're discussing tonight. I hope that was a educational conversation for you guys. It definitely was for me. All right, tonight, what else are we discussing? Candace Owens checks Piers Morgan. Honey, if you have not seen that interview, it is definitely fire. It's something else. It is something else. You're going to hear part of that tonight. I have a couple things to add to that discussion, of course. We are also going to discuss AOC both sides genocide. Yes, we're going to get into that craziness that happened with AOC, this live stream that she decided to do. She's getting a lot of criticism for that. We're also going to discuss a little bit of foreign policy here. Clare Daly loses her seat. So Clare is one of the most outspoken voices, or was one of the most outspoken voices in the EU. So we're definitely going to talk about that and pay a little bit of a tribute to when she was on the show. And last but not least, of course, Larry Sharpe was here to talk about what happened at that Libertarian National Convention and so much more. So I hope you have learned some things, folks. Let's go ahead and shout out some of the chats here. Let's give a shout out to Johnny Paul for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give Johnny a big whoop, 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 whoop. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat, Andre. Let our commitment to justice and peace be our guide, knowing that with compassion and resilience, we can build a better future for all. Well said, Andre. Thank you, Carrie. Tell Monster that all humans need free healthcare. Right? Thank you for that. Thank you, Laugh. Larry is deliberately vague about his pulling himself up by the bootstraps, and he will avoid proving it. Usual BS from another spoiled rich kid. Well, Larry has discussed this multiple times before. I've had that conversation with him the very first time he was on the show. So I don't know about that. But Larry did not grow up rich, though. Thank you for the super chat. Roger, Sab, I told you on call-in, Larry wasn't buying Robbie's BS. Oh, man. Thank you for the super sticker. Ivan, thank you so much. And thank you, DC, Libertarian Socialist Caucus LP has run candidates. Thank you so much for that jazz. All right. Without further ado, if you haven't had a chance to do so, smash that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. Yeah. And we're going to get it started with our first story here. Oh boy. So AOC decided to have a live stream where she was going to educate people about the importance of what it means to be anti-Semitic and the dangers of that. And it did not come across well. As you can imagine, the reason why that live stream was done was because of a protest that happened outside of an event in New York. And we'll get to that in just a second. But this is what she said to comment about the Nova Festival exhibit. So this is why this live stream was done. I want to be very clear about that. So she tweeted this first. The callousness, dehumanization, and targeting of Jews on display at last night's protest outside the Nova Festival exhibit was atrocious anti-Semitism, plain and simple. Anti-Semitism has no place in our city, nor any broader movement that centers human dignity and liberation. So there was a festival exhibit that basically was sort of a reenactment of what happened on October 7th. But there are some things that were a part of that exhibit that will explain to you why people were protesting the exhibit. So AOC leaves that out. We'll come to the Max Blumenthal in just a second. So if we go to the article here, it says pro-Palestinian protests moved through Manhattan on Monday night, resulting in 3 arrests. The demonstration started off in Union Square, but protesters ended up taking over a subway station and disrupting service. Then they took the train to Wall Street, where a large crowd gathered outside the Nova Music Festival exhibition. The Nova exhibit pays tributes to the victims of the October 7 attack on the Israeli Music Festival. So that is what that was about there. And then it goes on to say that the NYPD chief of transit defended the actions of officers on social media, writing when well of 100 plus people enter a subway station at a time, with some people yelling and chanting, some acting disorderly, and some entering illegally by jumping the turnstile. I'd say it's only appropriate that the police officer got involved to determine what was going on. So first of all, that sounds like normal New York City activity to me. When I lived in New York, it wasn't uncommon for everybody getting off the train once at a time. Was it uncommon for people to jump over the turnstile? No, it was not. This was not a new thing. So to me, that sounds like just old New York. That's what that sounds like to me. Sounds like old New York. So Max Blumenthal decided to, basically call out AOC about this. And Max Blumenthal said, "We know you're not allowed to do it, but it's still worth noting. Still worth noting. You have nothing to say about the open calls for genocide of Palestinians and Muslims posted inside the exhibit. You're always quick to condemn anti-Zionists, though." So this is something that she's leaving out. The reason why those protesters were there is because of some of the language and rhetoric that was used against the Palestinian people. And we'll show you some of those images here so you can see it for yourself. So it says, "Our unity will let your heal. The Gazans are all Amalek." So we all remember this. This is the same thing that Netanyahu said. They should be wiped off the face of the earth. So this is some of the art that was at that exhibit. I'll show you another one here. This one says, "Treat them as they treat us. That is the only language they understand." You see this? So this is what they were protesting. "May God avenge their blood." We go again. "I am struck by hope and beauty of the will to survive." It goes on to say here, "I am filled with shame and embarrassment that Muslim people are our cousins. I can't comprehend on Allah, who is proud of his children and Muhammad's descendants." I think that says, "May the love of life of the Nova of Israel overcome the evil of that one's hard to read, but I think that's Islam at the end there." So this is why the protest of that exhibit took place in the first place. They were protesting because of the rhetoric that was displayed against the Palestinian people. But AOC had nothing to say about that, nothing to say about that at all. And so she decided to do this live stream. And it's a hot mess. And we'll point out some of the people in this live stream. Like, it looks like it was some type of a hostage video of herself. It looks like AOC here was held hostage and forced to do this video. It reminds me of the video that Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher did after their co-star from that 70s show was found guilty of assaulting women, right? It reminds me of that video, which was really cringe, by the way. But let's get into this, and I'll show you this woman over here, Amy Spitalik. Amy, she's former ADL. So these, you'll see. Let's just get into it, right? So look at this.
Anti-Semitism is an assault on our values as Americans and especially as progressives. Anti-Semitism is also a threat to a community that is a vital partner in our struggles against injustice. So when the Jewish community is threatened, the progressive movement is undermined.
So let's pause there. Who was threatened based on the images that I just showed you? What about the threats that were made towards the Palestinian people? Not once does she do that. I don't see a live stream for her to call out the Islamophobia that was displayed against the Palestinian people. I don't see AOC doing a live stream for that. No.
That's why it is so important that we reject it as fiercely as we reject and look for misogyny, Islamophobia, or any form of bigotry or discrimination in any space that we occupy. Right now, anti-Semitism is on the rise in America and across the world.
So notice how she tried to add in Islamophobia there, but the event itself is about anti-Semitism. So she just kind of slides it in there to say, well, I mentioned it, but that's not what the live stream was about. So here is AOC seriously trying to both sides genocide. And some people said, well, you know, we're being too hard on her for this. No, we're not. Again, there is one group that is in power. The other group is not. Okay. So Gazans are not trying to genocide Israelis. The IDF and Netanyahu, they are trying to they're genociding the Palestinian people. They want them gone. And you can just look at those images of the messages that were posted at the exhibit, and it shows you they want them all gone. But when it is time to send a message to the people, when it's time to make a video about this type of discrimination, this type of pain, this type of behavior, she decides to make the video about anti-Semitism. The oppressor is not oppressed. Let's say this again for people in the back. The oppressor is not oppressed. When you are the one that is in power, you are not being oppressed. So here she is basically defending and trying to protect the occupying force instead of the people who are slowly but surely being wiped off the face of the earth.
Acknowledging that fact does not take away from fights for liberation. It actually advances them. And the growth of anti-Semitic attacks and rhetoric before and since October 7th is unacceptable to all of us who believe in a better world.
What growth? They continue to say this, the growth in these attacks. What are these attacks that they're referring to? They don't show any examples. What happened here was a group protested this exhibit, which they had every right to do so.
Period.
What's harder for us as progressives to recognize or understand is when anti-Semitism shows up and is normalized in our own spaces. And I want to be frank here. There is very real anti-Semitism that is in fact showing up in progressive spaces right now. And it's deeply painful and hurtful to Jews.
What are the examples? They give you no examples.
I want to just mention a couple of pain points in this moment, because if we can understand the harm some words do to other people, we can be attentive to preventing it. And that's a great beginning that will matter to a lot of people. So I talked about the conspiracy frame. And so whenever we hear about nefarious control behind world events, or now we're talking about the conflict, evil control of government policy by Jewish billionaires or Zionist donors, those are just like the George Soros accusations that aim.
So do you see what she's doing here? Notice how she moved from Jewish people to Zionist donors. First of all, Zionists aren't all Jewish people. Richie Torres is a Zionist. Hakeem Jeffries is a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jewish person to be a Zionist. There are a lot of Christian Zionists. So do you see the problem here? So you see what she's doing? She is basically saying that she's conflating Judaism and Zionism. She's trying to make it sound like it's one thing. And they're doing that on purpose. They're doing that so that they can tell you that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And AOC knows damn better. And so for AOC to sit there and just read whatever is in front of her, because it's very clear that she's reading, AOC knows better. So this is what they're doing. So they got AOC that said, we got one of the members of the squad. We convinced them to do this live stream with us, this cringe live stream with us. And now they can point to, and they could say, we have AOC sitting right here with us as we say that criticizing receiving money from billionaire Zionist donors is also anti-Semitism. Does everybody see what is happening here? Do you see what they're trying to do? Let's continue.
You described, this evil puppet master, trying to save democracy and support causes he cares about. So if your criticism of Israel is trafficking and stereotypes, you're really in the bigotry zone. I mean, stereotypes kill. That's how the Nazis got the German people to live with this so-called final solution. So
now you can't criticize George Soros. You see this? Who's next? Now you can't criticize George Soros for being a billionaire. Who's next? You can't criticize Bill Ackman. Who's next? What is happening here? You should be able to criticize all billionaires. And when I criticize billionaires, it has nothing to do with their religion and everything to do with the money and the exploitation, boo. It's not my fault that George Soros is a billionaire. I didn't make him a billionaire. He became a billionaire by exploiting the worker. And to see AOC sit there knowing she was once someone who championed the workers and fought for the workers, to see her sit there and not even push back on that. What a mess. How disgusting. Where is Justice Democrats? Where is this organization to call this out? Now you can't criticize George Soros. Now you can't criticize billionaires. What a mess.
We do the work all the time to avoid words that correlate with negative stereotypes, and we need to do that here.
I want to conclude by summarizing and saying that anti-Semitism is a threat to Jews and to the progressive movement, and as Amy has stated, to democratic freedom. And just like racism, anti-Black racism, Islamophobia, and misogyny, it makes all of us unsafe.
But you're not speaking about those issues. You see how she tried to bring us in there with this? You're not speaking about those issues. I don't see you making a live stream about racism against Black people. I don't see you doing a live stream about Islamophobia. This live stream in particular is about anti-Semitism, and you trying to bring all these other groups into it as well to say, look, what they're going through, we're all going through. No, we are not going through the same thing. I don't know how many times I have to say this. We are not going through the same thing. Every community has their own struggles, but it is very particular when we talk about what is happening in Israel and what is happening in Gaza. There is one group in power and the other group is occupied and oppressed. You cannot put us all on the same level when you literally have a group that is occupied and oppressed. And that's what AOC is trying to do. She's literally trying to both sides genocide. You cannot do that. So it's not about the fact that you choose to do a live stream to call out the so-called anti-Semitism acts that you say are happening. It's about who you choose to prioritize and when. During a time when a group of people are experiencing a genocide, where you have Palestinian Americans that have lost entire lifelines, family lines in Gaza, you chose to prioritize the occupying group, not the group that is being occupied, not the group that is being oppressed. That is a problem. I should have pulled up that other video too to show you what she said before. We'll see if we have time for that. but it is an absolute disaster.
We all have a stake in fighting it. And it's not on Jews to address anti-Semitism on their own. When it comes to the current conflict, it is possible to recognize Jewish pain, fear, and grief in that moment. And that does not take away from our grief and pain for families in Gaza. It is also important to educate ourselves about the lines past which criticism of the Israeli government can slip into a spectrum of anti-Semitism. And doing so and educating ourselves protects our Jewish neighbors. It protects the broader movement for the lasting peace from being discredited as well.
Thank you, David. AOC, CIA, AIPAC is all connected. Voting for AOC, supporting AOC has been an absolute joke. There's one more piece that I wanted to show here. I want to make sure this isn't the same part. I think this is another part here.
Very fascinated about a lot of your work at the intersection of anti-Semitism and what that means in the context of American democracy. And as someone who successfully went after the Nazis in Charlottesville in 2017, what does the current growth of anti-Semitism say to you about the state of our democracy, and how are these things related?
Yeah, look, anti-Semitism is, as you know, Deborah Lipstadt often says, the canary in the coal mine when it comes to democracy and the erosion of our democracy. And so we've talked a lot about how it works, right? Not just a form of racial, religious, ethnic bigotry, but this pernicious conspiracy theory that is intended to divide our communities, to sow distrust in our democracy, our institutions.
Pause. Because she said something about dividing communities, and this is something I want to focus on, right? And you'll find out who she is in just a second. Divide our communities. How are our communities together? What communities is she talking about? Now, AOC is in New York. I'm assuming they may be in New York. I don't know. But I can tell you this much because the communities don't look that integrated to me. So what do you mean by divide our communities? What are you talking about? How many of you live in communities that are integrated? How many of you live in communities that are diverse? I don't mean cities. I mean, you can walk around in your neighborhood. It's not as common as you think, even in 2024. How many of you? How many? Whether it's the Northeast, whether it's the cities, how many of you in your neighborhood right now can walk down the street, around the corner, go for a walk, let's say about 10 minutes, and your neighborhood is diverse? How many? Because you see, I'm going to keep it real with you. Particularly here in the Northeast, in the cities, the neighborhoods are very segregated. And you can see it, whether it's Boston, whether it's New York. There is Spanish Harlem. If you come to Boston, there are certain neighborhoods that are Haitian, that are Dominican, that are Latino, that are Irish. So what do you mean divides our communities? Because me and you, this is the thing. How many people, the people that they're mentioning, the Black people and all the other groups that she tried to add into this conversation, do they live in their neighborhood? Do they live in Amy's neighborhood? I'm willing to bet they don't. So what are you talking about? Divides our communities. The communities are already divided. Let's continue.
And that makes not only Jews unsafe, but each and every community unsafe. And it undercuts our democratic norms and values and the rule of law. It fuels attacks not just against Jews, but against so many communities, as we've talked about, the cycle of white supremacist violence. It fuels dehumanizing policies and anti-democratic extremism, right? Policies targeting immigrants because of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about replacement and invasion. Talked about so often how the name George Soros is used as a stand-in for Jews to describe a conspiracy theory, election denial, assaults on voting rights, these claims that there is an effort to replace white voters or Republican voters, as we often hear. We see.
So now election denial, criticizing George Soros, criticizing, having different views about immigration. Now this is all connected to anti-Semitism. Does everybody see what is happening here? What a mess.
See it in the neo-Nazis who are showing up at anti-trans or anti-drag events to recruit for their cause. We see it in the assault on reproductive rights and some of these conspiracy theories about birthright rates. And as I mentioned, this is ultimately leading not just to dehumanizing policies targeting so many communities, but a cycle of violence that has directly harmed not just Jews, but Black people, immigrants, Muslims, and so many other communities, motivated by these same conspiracy theories.
No, we are not in the same situations. And this is what kills me when they try to add all these other groups into this. We are not in the same situation. And let's be very clear here. Because a lot of the Black communities, particularly in the inner cities, are struggling. Lower income, people living in poverty. The schools are under-resourced and underfunded because there aren't enough property taxes to fund the public schools. We're not in the same situation. Meanwhile, you can go to other communities in Boston, other communities that Amy would be a part of, and they don't have that problem. Their schools are funded. They're not living in poverty. We are not going through the same thing. There is a difference, and people need to call this out. I can only listen to so much of this. Only listen to so much of this. But this is the live stream that drove people crazy. And let me show you something that Katie Halper pointed out that I think is important for people to see. Congrats, AOC, for getting praised by the former director of the ADL. Speaks volumes about the dialogue you had. Now, she's referring to this post here. This is from Abraham Foxman. Glad to see Representative AOC urge progressives not to let criticism of the Israeli government slip into anti-Semitism. You see what's happening here? You got that right? Okay. Let me ask you a question. This isn't said about other countries. You don't hear people saying, oh God, your criticism of the Chinese government should not slip into anti-Asian hate. Slip into Asian hate. Your criticism of Russia should not slip into Russian hate. Your criticism of Haiti should not slip into Haitian hate. It's only when it's Israel. We don't agree on that line, but I value the fact that she brought serious experts like Stacey Burdett and Amy Spittelnick to sensitize her audience on anti-Semitism. So does everybody see what is happening? They used AOC as a puppet to convince whatever's left of her base not to go too hard against Israel. That's exactly what they're doing, not to go too hard against Israel. So they had to pick someone like either AOC or Ilhan Omar or Cori Bush, which those two probably wouldn't do it. We know Rashida Tlaib isn't going to do it. So who do they grab? AOC, also because she's one of the more popular members of the squad. So they get her. Let's get her to convince the young people not to be so hard on Israel. That's what that is. You cannot sit here and both sides this issue. You cannot sit here and both sides of genocide. And AOC should be ashamed of herself for doing what she did. She is a puppet. And we can see who's pulling the strings. What a mess. What a mess. And she's mad at people on social media that are coming after her, criticizing her for that. She's upset with them. No, you need to be upset with yourself. Because you can't be sitting out there one day telling people what is happening to the Palestinian people is wrong. And you say you're there for those people and their struggle. And then when it is time for you to have a serious discussion, to do a live stream to your supporters, you choose to prioritize the group that is oppressing and occupying and kicking people out of their homes over the ones that are being kicked out, burned, bombed, beaten, and oppressed. Shame on you. Shame on you. It's disgusting. What a joke. You know, if I could go back years time, if I could go back in time, I would have never donated to AOC. I would have never supported that woman. What a mess. Thank you, Roger. 8-1 SCOTUS decision said Starbucks can union bust. That doesn't surprise me. Starbucks has lost a lot of money. Thank you, DC. Islamophobia is usually anti-Semitic. Arabs equals Semites. Yes, indeed. Thank you, David. AOC's word salad is full of empty calories. Thank you, Dwayne. When AOC validates the false victimhood of the Zionists citing imaginary anti-Semitism, she enables the genocide of the Palestinians. Exactly. And she knows what she's doing. Also, she can continue to be a careerist. Thank you, Nas M. That's AOCIA. Thank you, Janice. My community is very diverse. My neighborhood is Black, white, Hispanic, West Asian, East Asian, Caribbean, Slavic, Indo-European, Irish, etc. That's great. But the thing is, Janice, for the majority of Americans, that's not the case. Thank you, General Mile. Bay Sabby keeps speaking truth. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. They, Sabby, we have drive-by shootings here in Ireland. Look at it. Interesting. I didn't know you had drive-by shootings in Ireland. What is up? All right. Quick announcement for tomorrow. Tomorrow's show is going to be a little bit different. I will be live at 1 p.m. Eastern time to accommodate our guests because tomorrow, Friday, Mark Sloboda will be here. It'll be his first time on the show, 5 p.m., 1 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Don't miss that. I'm excited to talk to him. You've probably seen him on maybe Danny Haifong's show. I think he was just on Rachel Blevin's show. He talks a lot about Russia and Ukraine. He has a lot to say, and I have a lot to ask him considering what just happened with the dollar, Moscow Stock Exchange decision about not trading the dollar. I'm going to talk to him about that. We're going to talk to him about what does Russia really want. So we're going to get into some deepness there. So don't miss that tomorrow, guys. 1 p.m. Eastern with Mark Sloboda. First time on the show. Excited to talk to him. All right. Eric, we can go to part 2 whenever you are ready. Thank you, Marvin. AOC going for those ZIO dollars or donors. What a mess, man. What a mess. Ay. Whoopity boop boop. Okay. We're moving on to our next story. So someone that I really admired in the EU did not win their seat, and that is Clare Daly. You know, Clare Daly, I think, has been one of the most vocal people for the anti-war movement. She's spoken out about the war in Ukraine. She's spoken out heavily against Israel, about their assault on the Palestinian people. But unfortunately, Clare Daly did not win her re-election. And we're going to go into some things that happened here. And then I want to take you back just a little bit to show you a sign, right? Like, so when I interviewed Clare Daly over a year ago, there was something she said in that interview that gave me pause, that made me think, well, maybe she might have difficulty winning re-election, right? So this was announced from The Guardian. So that's Clare Daly there. And she's wearing the Free Assange t-shirt. She's pretty base. Like I always said, Clare was pretty on the money. Controversial Dublin MEP candidate Clare Daly loses seat despite celebrity backing. So Clare Daly, Ireland's outspoken and controversial Dublin MEP candidate, has lost her seat despite celebrity endorsements from Annie Lennox, Susan Sarandon, and other prominent figures. First of all, I was quite delighted to see that she was endorsed by Annie Lennox. Do you guys remember that band called the Eurythmics? Does anybody remember that? I don't know if everybody heard of this. It was the Eurythmics, and then Annie Lennox went solo and did her own thing. They had that song, Sweet Dreams Are Made of Us, whatever. Anyway, they were pretty based. I always thought Annie Lennox was pretty based. The left-wing candidate was eliminated on Tuesday after falling behind rivals in the Dublin constituency on the 17th count. During her stint at the European Parliament, Daly denounced Western militarism and was accused of giving succor to Vladimir Putin and other dictators, which she denied. She gained a big following on social media platforms and often appeared on state-leaning media in China and Russia. Notice how they frame that. I've always been honored to have been able to use this platform as a powerful voice for peace, anti-militarism, and neutrality, Daly posted on X. This result is not a rejection of those ideas. It is a testament to the success and reach of the work we've done that the establishment came out in such force to harm my chances of re-election. Daly has 424,000 followers on X and high-profile supporters in the arts. During the election campaign, Lennox, the Eurythmics singer, and Sarandon, the Thelma and Louise star, posted messages urging Irish voters to back the Independence for Change candidate. So yeah, unfortunately, Clare Daly did not win her re-election. It goes on to say here, as Daly left the Count Center in South Dublin, she rebuffed an RTE reporter who asked for an interview. And I'm actually going to show you that right about now. So here she was after she lost her seat. And so there was a reporter here for RTE News who did ask her how she felt about it. And I thought her answer was marvelous. Marvelous, darling.
Claire, would you have a word with us? How are you
You've
feeling?
no interest in talking to me for 5 years, so I've no interest in talking to you.
Claire, would you have a word with us? How are you
You've no
feeling?
interest in talking to me for 5 years, so I've no interest in talking to you.
Well put, right? Like they didn't want to talk to her before. Now all of a sudden that she's lost her seat, now they want to talk to her. So that is that. Ravina said, I like Annie solo better. She went heavy into blues and sound. She did. She did. Now I have like the Annie songs in my head, like Walking on Broken Glass and everything. But Clare Daly, she was here over a year ago. I'm not sure if Clare Daly is doing interviews anymore. Like I think during this time, she came onto my show. I think she also came on to Useful Idiots. I don't know if she's interested in doing interviews now that she is no longer a part of the EU. But I guess we can always see. There are two clips here that I want to show you from a previous interview with her that kind of made me wonder, you know, like, are they going to try to find ways to push her out as well? And then I want to show you what this means for European elections and what that could mean for the United States. Is there a shift happening in Europe? Let's go ahead and bring in this clip here. Yes. Why is it for someone like you, you don't seem to have that fear to be vocal about this conflict and express exactly like how you feel? That one of the things you mentioned recently was that there needs to be some type of call for peace. We're not hearing that from our congressmen and women in the United States. Why is it that you're not afraid to be vocal about those things?
Well, I think there's two things about that question. I think your representatives aren't unique in that. I mean, we get this all the time, like there are over 700 members in the European Parliament, for example, and in the first resolution on the war, there were 13 of us who voted against it. So we're kind of in a small minority here as well. So it would be wrong to think that Europe is full of all these people standing up against the war. It certainly isn't. The political establishment in Europe is completely out of step with the hearts and minds of its citizens. And that's a huge political problem across both sides of the Atlantic, that the people in power are actually divorced from the ideas and the lived experience of most people. And that's for us a huge example in relation to the war. Like, I'm from Ireland, it's a very small country in Europe, but we get contacted by people every single day from other countries across Europe saying, why are you the only ones kind of saying this? So, I mean, that's a negative in some ways. I suppose why you could say one of the reasons why we are is that I'm not a member of a political party. And people think you have to be in a political party to have an ideology. But that's just utter nonsense. You know, I obviously have an ideology. I'm a left-wing person. I would say I'm a socialist. but I don't have to be in a party. I was in a party for years. I don't feel I need to be in a party to stand by them. And sometimes when people are in parties, the party is used to batter them into line. And they're afraid to stand against the party hierarchy because they're the people who they think get them elected. So they're serving the party rather than the people who the party is supposed to be serving. It puts that layer in there. But look, at on the other side, I mean, the propaganda around this war and the intimidation of anti-war activists, of ordinary people, even of European business interests whose interests are not even being served by this war, but even European capitalism has been cowed into shutting up and not speaking out against this war. Such is the scale of the propaganda that's around it. I have never in my life seen anything like it. And I've been involved in politics for a very long time. And we have been subjected to the most appalling vitriol. And even now, people at home would say to us, oh my God, your reputation has been literally jumped on in the media, that we have been described as Putin puppets, as sort of almost been responsible for killing people in Ukraine, when we're the people who have the record of being anti-war, and the people given out to us are the people who championed and facilitated US imperialism in its wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. They're people who never say, let's arm the Palestinians against Israel, or say, let's go and give the people of Yemen some weapons to fight the Saudis. They never say that. But suddenly now, giving weapons to Ukraine is a way of helping the people of Ukraine. What utter nonsense. They are the people who are the cannon fodder of this war. And unfortunately, their leader Zelensky seems to be, I don't know, I'm seriously thinking now that this man is getting about a cent for every piece of ammunition that's thrown into that country, because it is beyond any military industrial complex's fanfare or marketplace. The amount of weapons that are going into that country, the amount of it that's ending up for sale on the black market in Europe, is just scandalous. The only people winning out of this are the military industrial complex, yet society and the media are the biggest people responsible in this, are battering people into submission, that people are afraid to talk about peace, because if you do, you're going to be labeled as a Putin puppet, you're going to be accused of murdering people in Ukraine, and people are afraid, and people kind of say, whew, don't need that hassle. And we get it every single day from people in every European country saying, really like what you're saying, we agree, my work colleagues agree, but we're afraid to speak out because when we do, we just get kind of jumped on. And that's some scary spectacle. But that it comes back to the media for sure. They are bought and paid for, and they are just puppets of the political establishment. And sadly, the European establishment has sold itself. As I say, I actually think, and I think many sections of European capitalism realizes that they too have shot themselves and have lost money, but they're afraid to speak up as well. It's mental, and they've spent the need to US imperialism and to NATO. And as I
it's very important what she said there. Notice how Clare called out the media. She called out the military industrial complex, like not just calling out the politicians, right? Like she's calling out the media, because the media is the one that shapes the narrative. I want to remind everyone, this is before October 7th. So this is Clare speaking out against the war in Ukraine. She is one of the politicians who spoke out against the war in Ukraine, but is also speaking out against Israel's assault in Gaza. And not everybody has been that way. So one of the things that I had wondered, especially during that time, was how is it that people like politicians like her and Mick in the EU, how is it that they're not afraid, that they're able to be, you know, those anti-war voices there? Well, she actually responded to that as well. I want to get to that piece here. And it was actually from a question from MJ Anti-Imperialist Party. Clare, Daly, why are you and Mick the only non-war voices in the EU? Great representation from Ireland.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, the Irish media will tell you that we're actually an embarrassment and a disgrace, and we have ashamed our country. That's the message in the Irish media. But actually, as your callers thing is totally, we get that all the time from people.
So it was that part right there where she said to the Irish media, her and Mick were considered to be embarrassing and a disgrace. It was that part there that made me wonder, is she going to have a hard time winning re-election? Because the reality is, it's a lot harder to win if the media is against you. It's a lot harder to win if the media either ignores you, they pretend like you do not exist, or they don't ignore you, but they spend all their time like smearing you. If you don't have the media on your side, it can be very difficult to win, even if you are already in office. We'll go on a little bit more here.
All across Europe. We're not the only ones, but I suppose we've been the most vocal. Why is that? Well, I suppose the short answer is that in about 10 of the 27 European countries, less than 30% of people vote. So the people who are in these chambers are very unrepresentative of the electorate. And there's a big gulf between the people and the institutions here. It's a big bubble. It's a corporate, imprisoned by corporate lobbying. But actually the people have little control over it because we've an unelected commission and the council and all the rest. But yeah, the others could do more, but I think most of them are afraid and they're constrained by their political parties. But it has changed a bit. We've noticed from the first motion where there were maybe 13 people against it, in the latter motions between, you know, abstentions and people voting against, it might have gone up to maybe nearer to 100 out of 700. So people are getting a bit more confident and people are asking a bit more questions. So it's sadly, it's the lived experience of the horror of the war that's making them change their mind. But hopefully there'll be a few people who learn a bit quicker, because we need to bring an end to this slaughter for sure.
Yeah, it was really great to talk to Clare. I'll try to reach out again, assuming she still has that access to that email address, at least for like a month or so. I'll try to reach back out to her again to bring her back on. And I'm so glad I went away from the blonde dye, because good knows. Yeah, that was when Sabby went a little too blonde. But yeah, Clare Daly is a real one, guys. Like a real one. And Clare Daly is, I know we just talked about AOC, but Clare Daly is what I wanted AOC to be. You know, that's what I thought I was going to get. You know, it's like you have this expectation, you think you're going to get something, and instead you end up with something else. Like, I thought that is what I was getting when I supported AOC. Yeah. I said the same thing with Kshama Sawant. Like, I thought I was getting like a Kshama Sawant when I supported AOC. So it made me wonder with Clare Daly losing, and it brought my attention to what is happening with a right-wing surge that's happening in the EU Parliament. And I'm wondering if this has something to do with it. Is, you know, there a change happening here in Europe? Are people moving further to the right? Now, this happened recently. The right-wing surge in EU Parliament could have implications for Europe and beyond. And I just want to highlight this top paragraph here. Populist far-right parties could have a bigger hand in European policymaking over the next 5 years after initial results from the EU election on Sunday suggested the parliamentarian landscape is being redrawn. So that right there, it made me wonder. Gains for the Nationalist Identity and Democracy Party, ID, and losses for the Green/European Free Alliance could leave centrist parties dependent on the right for key votes in the 720-seat European Parliament. So currently there is this right-wing shift that is happening in the EU Parliament, where they have won these seats. And that makes me wonder, you know, is that part of the reason why maybe Clare didn't win? There's a shift. There's something changing there in Europe. And what does that mean for our politics here in the United States? Because typically we go hand in hand. So if there is an increase in right-wing populism in Europe, I would be silly to not assume that there may be an increase of that here happening in the United States. So we'll have to see what happens. But Clare Daly will definitely be missed. I hope I don't know what she has planned. I'll reach out and try to find out, but I hope that is not the last that we hear of her. You know, maybe she'll start a podcast or something like that. I don't know, but we'll see. Queer Black Socialista, walking on broken glass. Do, Do 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 do. See, now we have Annie Lennox songs in our head. Conspiriality. Claire Daly, like Cynthia McKinney, will be remembered for a long time for being a real one. I agree with you. Thank you, David. Reach out to Claire because she has plans after losing her seat. She's not done by a long shot. Her and Mick are my faves, and being Irish is a bonus. Thank you so much for that. Cup of Joy. Claire should team up with George Galloway. That would be interesting. That would be interesting. Thank you for the super sticker, One Maggot Brain. That's an interesting name. Thank you, Jay Tolberts. Claire Daly's loss was like a punch to the gut. I feel despondent since she's one of the few who used her political power for peace and good, and her platform was silence. I agree with you there, 100. Antoine says Claire was in the Irish Parliament before. She should run again. I hear you. And the Oracle says AOC is tissue paper compared to Claire Daly being wood. Thank you so much for that. Sweet dreams are made of these. See, it's stuck there now. Some of them want to use you. All right, guys, we're moving on to our final story tonight. Candace Owens and Claire. I was going to say Claire. Candace Owens and Piers Morgan had quite an interesting discussion. Of course, I think this is the first time that Candace has been on Piers Morgan's show since her firing from the Daily Wire. So there's a couple of moments from this interview that I do want to touch on. The first one being, why did she leave the Daily Wire? Why was she booted, etc.? There's only so much that Candace can actually talk about with that particular issue because of that gag order. Then we're going to move into her position on Israel and Gaza, which is where things did get quite a bit heated. But it's entertaining, but quite a bit heated because Piers doesn't like to let people talk and he likes to interrupt them. First, let's get started with her departure from the Daily Wire. And there's a couple of things I want to show you as well as we go through this interview, just to fact check some of the things here that I think is important for people to see. So let's go ahead and bring this in here. There are some things that Piers was right about. I felt like there were some things that she was right about, but we're going to make a connection here when we get to the Israel-Gaza part, because there's something that I do want Candace Owens to do that she has not done, and we'll get to that. Let's start.
Why did you leave the Daily Wire?
Well, unfortunately, I can't talk about the specific reasons that I left the Daily Wire, but what I can do is respond to whatever reasons were given to the public. And obviously, no sooner did we agree to leave than Andrew Klavan of the Daily Wire did an entire episode stating that the reasons that I was leaving was because I was anti-Semitic and I was engaging in a type of anti-Semitism that was hard to pin down. And that is why in my first episode of launching my independent podcast, I hit back pretty hard at him because, I think it's pretty despicable, first and foremost, as a colleague who I had a great relationship with, to have engaged in that, knowing that I was not at liberty to say anything. I thought it was a very underhanded, disgusting tactic, and I responded in force.
I want to play you what Ben Shapiro told me when I asked him about this on Uncensored. One of the consequences of this war has been a lot of very high passions on both sides, a lot of angry disagreements. You and your company have been at the center of a very high-profile one at the moment with Candace Owens, who's now left Daily Wire. Was she fired, or did she leave of her own volition?
I'm not going to speak to this topic, Piers.
At all?
At all. The only thing I will say is what I've said all along with regard to Candace or with regard to any of our other hosts. I am not in hiring and firing position with the Daily Wire. I'm a co-founder of the Daily Wire. I'm a co-owner of the Daily Wire. I'm not actually in management. And as far as the free speech situation, what I will say is that no company has the obligation to literally pay anyone. The Daily Wire is a publisher. It is not a platform.
Do you agree?
So remember, I told you why he continues to say that, right? That it's a publisher, not a platform. That's for legal reasons. That's why he continues to say that. So they're not obligated to have to pay her.
With that, Candace?
Agree with which part?
Well, okay, any of it.
Well, I think that it's interesting, and I'd love to sit down with and debate Ben Shapiro on a number of topics, particularly cancel culture, because I know that he's made some comments in the past that he believes that publishers, platforms should allow people to have different ideas. And so those particular comments to me sound in contrast to what he has said in the past, but I can't speak on behalf of him, obviously. I personally believe that media companies are healthier when you allow people to have different opinions and allow people to debate those opinions. Personally, I love to see a debate between two people. And so I can only tell you what my perspective is and can't really speak for him.
I mean, he made the point at the end there that any company, any private company, when it comes to free speech, is not compelled to pay people to work for them. I mean, would you accept that as a principle?
Well, what I would say again is that it just kind of runs into what is wrong. I guess the question you could ask is, what is wrong if CNN fires somebody for having a different opinion? What then is wrong if Fox News fires somebody for having a different opinion? Your answer would have to be that it's not wrong and that companies are at will to curate whatever belief system that they want and to not allow free speech. So, you know.
The point is that it's hypocritical because the Daily Wire was known for being pro-free speech. So it is hypocritical when you fire one of your own because of their speech, especially one of the biggest stars, I would say, that was a part of the Daily Wire. So yeah, it is hypocritical. That's the point. To me, I'm not thinking about whether or not they're a publisher or a platform. You know, Ben Shapiro wants to bring that up because he wants to focus on the legality of it. But that's not what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about the hypocrisy. The fact that you guys started the Daily Wire and you said this is going to be a free speech space, and then you fire one of your own because they're not pro-Israel enough for you and because they criticize Israel's government. Candace didn't even go hard at Israel the way a lot of us did. She didn't even say some of that. She didn't say Israel doesn't have a right to exist. She didn't say she doesn't believe in a two-state solution. She didn't say any of those things. Like, what she said was very mild, and they canceled her for that.
Out of interest, is it true that you signed an NDA and that's why you can't really talk about this in detail?
I cannot speak in detail about any of that stuff.
You can't even confirm whether you've had an NDA?
I am not free to speak about any topic pertaining to contracts signed or not signed. And so
they put a gag order on her, so she can't talk about that. But Piers already knew that.
You see, this is where it gets interesting for me, because you referenced Andrew Klavan from the Daily Wire. I want to play a part of what he said, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
The Daily Wire parted ways with Candace Owens, and part of it was things that she was saying that we felt were strongly anti-Semitic. And she was doing it in such a way that it was kind of hard to pin down. So I was trying to show where these things happen.
So I'm bemused because I've been involved in a lot of contracts in my time. I've been an employer, I've been an employee, and so on. I don't understand why somebody from the Daily Wire can be so explicit about the reasons you left, and yet you are not able to be as explicit to defend yourself or to counter what they're saying.
Amen, Piers. Amen. I think that is probably a question that was on a lot of people's minds. And, you know, what can I say other than what was it that Kanye was saying about contracts? And, you know, I think it is, even if you believe that it is valid for that to happen, I think it is immoral to allow someone to attack someone and to not allow them to defend their name. And so for me, Andrew actually rose to the level of defamation when he started claiming that I had actually said things that I had never said. I mean, he flagrantly lies, and I showed that on my platform when he pretended that I did an episode suggesting that Adolf Hitler burning books was a good thing. I wasn't even speaking about Adolf Hitler. It's a nonsense to think that I would do that on my platform. And it's a trick also. It's meant to make people feel emotional and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that she's supporting Adolf Hitler. And I thought it was nasty business. I thought it was extremely nasty business. And, you know, for me, Piers, it's important for me to state my name means a lot to me. my grandfather grew up on a sharecropping farm, one of 12 children, in the segregated South, Robert Owens Sr. And for him to have worked the way that he worked and to have instilled the Christian values in me that he instilled in me growing up, the idea that I would allow someone to so flagrantly throw dirt on his name, it was never going to fly.
Was Candace stabbed in the front or stabbed in the back, do you think? Do you think by the members of Daily Wire, did they stab her in the back or did they stab her in the front? Because it seems like there was some underhanded dirtiness that was going on in reference to some of the content. And to me, again, like I said, if these were issues back then, why wasn't that raised back then? If they had those issues with her back then, why didn't they raise it back then? Why did it happen after October 7th? I think we all know why, right? I think most of you were saying both, stabbed in the front and in the back. I could see that.
Did you ever say or do anything which to a Jewish ear could be construed as anti-Semitic?
Well, let's be clear about all of these topics, whether we're talking about racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, everything can be construed to an ear when you're talking about a subjective ear that I believe that this is racist. I mean, I could say, hey, Piers, you even asking me questions. And to me, it feels racist, right? A feeling and a fact are two different things. So what someone construes something is meaningless. Factually speaking, I have never said anything that is anti-Semitic. And had I have said something that was anti-Semitic, Andrew Klavan would have simply showed the clip.
Right. A lot of attention has been focused on you constantly referencing Christ is King. Many people.
I got to pause here and we got to interrupt here for just a second. First of all, I heard that in church. When I was growing up, I heard that phrase in church. Some of you, if you grew up in the church, you probably heard that before as well. It is very interesting to me that now all of a sudden that particular phrase is now a problem. So when I saw the legislation that was presented to Congress about what you cannot say anymore, or it will be deemed as anti-Semitic, it gave me a great pause. And it gave me great pause because I started to think about some of the things that were in that legislation apply to Christian churches in the United States. So for people who are Christian and who do attend church, what does that mean for their faith? What does that mean for the Bible? Because if we really want to go there, some of the rhetoric that the legislation said you could not say it would not be acceptable because it is deemed anti-Semitic is straight from the Bible. So does that mean people can't read the Bible anymore? Is that what we're talking about? I don't care what religion you are, but that's how far this has come, you guys. I have never seen this happen for any other group. I have never seen Congress rush to try to pass legislation to protect Black people in this country. I've never seen this. Never. So everyone should be concerned, whether you care about foreign policy or not. This is now just a free speech issue as well, not just about the war. This is a free speech issue.
People believing that although those words in themselves, if you're a Christian, as you are, would not be offensive, that to Jewish people, when they're being whipped up on social media, as they were at the time, by people who are genuine white supremacists and pretty brazen anti-Semites, that being smart as you are, you would have known that to deliberately use that phrase repeatedly in that time, in that climate, was a deliberate act of provocation to people like Ben Shapiro, who obviously are extremely high-profile Jewish people. Do you accept that?
I'm sorry, which time frame are you talking about when you say at that time?
Well, since the start of the Israel-Hamas war.
Yeah, no. So that phrase, if you're talking about when it began to be a scandal, because I think everyone was quite confused when there was suddenly this narrative that it could be construed as anti-Semitic, which is why it required so much explaining by people of when it became anti-Semitic. I posted a standalone Bible verse, this is just a pure fact, calling for peace. And at the end of the verse, I ended it and said, Christ is King, last November. Andrew Klavan references that. The reason why this even became a scandal is because of Andrew Klavan. Andrew Klavan did an episode called Because Christ is Really King. And then he accused me wrongly of spitting that phrase at a Jew. That simply never happened, as I showed in my first episode back. It was, we just made that up out of thin air. I posted a standalone Bible verse and I wrote at the end of it, Christ is King. And then a Jew responded to me telling me to quit my job. So what happens sometimes is then time passes and people try to rewrite history, but we're not going to do revisionist history here. I tweeted Christ is King appropriately following a Bible verse when I was 38 weeks pregnant. And I stand by that proverb and I stand by my declaring Christ to be King as I have done many times in the past.
2 things.
So here's my take on this. Who cares when she tweeted it? Who cares when she said it? All this frustration and all this, yelling back and forth over what someone believes. Religion is a belief. If that's what she believes, that is fine. If that's not what you believe, that is fine. This is why I continue to say this. And guys, I will drill this down as hard as I need to. Religion is a belief. Religion is not a fact. To you, it may be a fact because you believe it. But there's a difference between what you believe and what can actually be proven. This is important, folks. So in this country, we have a separation of church and state, and we have that for a reason. And now here we are in 2024. Here we are in 2024, where people are trying to force their religious beliefs on you, or they're trying to strip you of the ones that you have. This is insane. This is insane. I can't prove any of these things happened. You can believe it, but can we prove it actually happened? Jeez Louise, this is terrible.
Because it's basic Christian doctrine.
2 things about that. Why would you tweet that particular passage from the Bible, ending Christ is King, on 14th of November 2023? What was your motivation?
Yeah, happy to answer that question. So if people remember what was happening at that time, Ben Shapiro was caught on a tape calling me faux sophisticated and some other stuff, a disgrace, I think was the term. And again, I was 38 weeks pregnant, about to give birth. And my husband just told me, every media person in the world is contacting you globally, asking you to give a comment, to say something. It's obviously a very traumatizing thing to go through in the moment when you're that pregnant and suddenly you're like, I just don't want to deal with this drama. I don't mean like trauma in the very leftist, I feel traumatized by this, but just it's a lot happening leading up to birth. And my husband told me to read the Bible. He said, just read the Bible. You don't have to answer these media members. You don't have to give a comment. You don't have to say anything. These things are all fickle. It doesn't matter.
But just to be clear on the chronology, because the video of Ben saying what he said, we said, I think her behavior during this has been disgraceful, without a doubt. I think her faux sophistication.
That came first.
Yeah, that came out on 15th of November 2023. But you had posted what you posted on the 14th of November.
That's not correct. You have your timeline wrong. It was the video came first.
So you were responding directly to the video?
No, I'm trying to finish the story, but you just have just so you know, chronologically, you have it wrong. His insult came first. I think it was on the 12th. The insult came.
Were you made aware of the insult because and then did it become public? I
found out on Twitter with everybody else. It was just trending, and so just to go back into it, my husband told me to read the Bible and to realize that these things are fickle and that all of these journalists that were asking me to respond to them are doing it because all they want is clicks and money, and they want they want to use you for a moment that's not going to matter in the scheme of things in your life. And so I wanted to respond to all of these media members by saying that I'm calling for peace. Christ is King of my heart. I don't need this right now. So that was it.
The point that I want to make here is that none of this, in my opinion, I don't feel like that even needs to be said. That's the problem that I had with that part of the interview. Who cares? Why are we focusing on the fact that someone said Christ is King? Who cares? Who cares? For those of you, if you grew up in the South, right? I lived in the South before I lived in Boston area. I lived in the South. I've lived in other places, but this is not an uncommon phrase. If you lived in the Bible Belt, it is not uncommon to hear that. Now, all of a sudden, this is a problematic phrase. because Zionists say so. What else is going to be a problematic phrase? Let's go on more. We're going to we go more into Israel and Palestine. This is where things get a little bit heated.
When you appeared on Tucker Carlson on the 16th of November, you said, I will say I'm not going to respond with the same ad hominem attack. But you also told him that day that was when you first saw the video.
We're fast forwarding because he spent too much time on Crisis King. I'm sorry.
That statement should hold.
No, I agree.
There is no justification ever in the world
but for the record,
genocide. So.
Okay, I'm sorry. I fast forwarded a little bit too much there. Let's go to right about here. There we go.
And so it just happened to be his luck or misfortune, whichever way you look at it, that was going on at the same time.
So in the build up to this, you'd already made it clear that you'd said on Twitter on November the 3rd, no government anywhere has a right to commit a genocide ever. There is no justification for a genocide. I can't believe this even needs to be said or is even considered the least bit controversial to state. You didn't say what you were talking about in that tweet, but it was widely assumed to be Gaza and what Israel was doing in Gaza. Is that correct? Were you talking about Israel there?
No, actually, when I wrote that tweet, if you look right before that tweet, I had retweeted and liked something from a journalist named Yashar Ali. He had shared a clip of a Congressman, Brian Mast, who got up on a platform and said that there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian life. That is despicable, genocidal language. And I am paraphrasing here, but Yashar Ali said, and he's pro-Israel, by the way, if I'm judging by what he puts online, he said, can we all just admit that this language is unacceptable? And
let me pause here for just a second. She's referring to Brian Mast, the congressman who also was an IDF soldier. He's the one that wears the IDF uniform sometimes in Congress. You may have seen videos of him on Twitter, usually by Code Pink and other people who approach him. That's another thing I want to bring up as well. Why the hell are you allowed to wear a uniform from another country in the United States government? Why are you allowed to wear a uniform from another country when you are serving in Congress? I don't even know how this is allowed. I just really don't. That should have never been a thing, but he does it.
Tweeted that no government in the world, and I was actually commenting on America, genocide is always wrong. And so, by the way, even if I was talking about Israel or I was talking about Palestine, that statement should hold.
No, I agree.
There is no justification ever in the world for genocide. So I was very surprised to see that tweet go viral and people so angry about it. I was actually overseas at the moment. I was in the UK. And so it seemed very strange to me that people would have a problem with it no matter what side you're on. But in that particular moment, I was talking about Brian Mast, and on my show, my very next show, I clarified that.
And do you think, for the record, that what Israel's been doing constitutes genocide?
Here we go.
What I've been having trouble is all of the people that are pro-Israel and say it's not a genocide won't tell me what is a genocide. What percentage of a population has to be killed before we can use the word genocide? It's a funny little thing. They won't tell you. They won't tell you what constitutes genocide. So I would like a clear understanding of how many Palestinians have to die before we are allowed to term it a genocide. All of the experts can't agree on what a genocide actually is, but they love to float around the word on virtually every other issue. You know, I had Rabbi Barclay on my show, on one of my last shows when I was on the Daily Wire, and I asked him that question pointedly: what is genocide? Let us know, experts, what percentage of the population of Palestinians has to be killed before we are allowed to say that it's genocide. What I can tell you is I am completely uncomfortable and utterly against the amount of Palestinian innocent lives that have been lost in this conflict, particularly children.
This is where we got to pause because we have to have a quick deep discussion here, because this is something that if I spoke to Candace Owens, this is something I would ask her. If you can see the atrocities that are happening in Gaza, which I've been talking about for God knows how long, and you can see the children that are being killed in Gaza, and you can have that sympathy and empathy about them. The Palestinian kids, why can't you have that same type of empathy for Black kids that are killed in the US by police? That's a question I would ask Candace Owens, because she's not with the Daily Wire anymore. And when I brought this up on Twitter, people said, no, Sabby, that was the past. Let's move forward. Yeah, that was the past. But Candace can still make this statement today. She can still say this today. Tamir Rice was a kid. Tamir Rice was a child that was killed by the police for playing with a toy gun. A kid. And he's not the only one. I've covered multiple ones on this show before. I think the last one I covered, it was a 14-year-old boy that was killed by the police. Just shot in the head. A kid. So that's my question. That is the question that I would ask Candace. Why can't you have that same empathy for Black kids, unarmed Black kids who were killed by the police in the United States? Why didn't you have that same empathy and sympathy for them? Why do you have to go on the other side of it and support the oppressor or support the dominating, energy that is attacking them? But when it comes to Israel and Gaza, like, you can see it, you get it. You say, I can't stand seeing the children that are dying. But why don't you have that same empathy and sympathy towards Black kids that die in this country that are gunned down and killed by the police? Everybody brings up George Floyd. It's not just George Floyd. Police brutality happens every day. There are certain cases that you hear about, and most of them you don't hear about. A lot of times, if no one catches it on a cell phone, local news will bury the damn story. So where's that same empathy? And I said that, we'll come back to this, but I said that someone brought it up on Twitter theirself. Or do I have it? Did I not bring it up? Yeah, it was Old Crow. Old Crow said it. Thank you so much, Old Crow. And we'll go back to the video. That's what bothers me. So you can see this with Christians, but you can't see it with Blacks. I get it. She values her religion over her skin color. But this is still a simple right versus wrong. If it's wrong, call it out. That's not a hard stance to take as a human. If she can recognize the evil in how Christians worldwide have been persecuted, she should be able to identify how Blacks and other groups have also. Yeah, because that was this. I told you guys we were going to have this conversation about this tonight, because I got to say it, like, where's that same energy? Where's that same sympathy? And I'm not saying that you should not have sympathy and empathy for the Palestinian people. I have sympathy for Palestinians. I've been talking about it for quite a long time, way before October 7th, by the way, when a lot of people were not talking about this issue. But when I see you don't seem to have that same compassion, particularly for your own people, that gives me pause. So again, that is something that Candace can still do. And if she was just doing that because she was with the Daily Wire and that's what they wanted her to do, that is the past. You got to move forward. Candace Owens is younger than me. We were all young at one point. But I will say she can still do that today. She can correct that today. Let me continue here.
And any person who is fearful of stating that the death of innocent children has been utterly unacceptable is a coward.
I mean, listen, I completely agree. But do you personally think it constitutes genocide, which is the deliberate?
What I'm saying to you is,
I can tell you what
pursued on my show.
Yeah.
What is the number?
No, I understand.
What is the official number? That's it. I mean, somebody tell me, and I'll give you an answer.
Well, I don't think there is a specific.
Try it when you have.
Well, it's not about a number.
People on both sides of the debate on.
Yeah, but it's not.
No. What do you mean it's not a number?
Here's my answer.
And do they give you an answer?
Well, no, because here's the point. It's not about specific numbers. It's about an intent.
But it has to be.
Well, no, it's not. It's about an intent to eradicate.
That's not true, Piers, because in America, they say that Native Americans, it was a genocide committed by white men. This is what they say, right?
So let me show you what the definition says. Okay, let's get into this, because this does come up a lot where people say it has to be a certain number. And I'll just show you the definition here right from the UN's website. And then we'll go back to the video. So here's the definition. Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Check this out. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent. This is where Piers is actually right. So I said there's some things Piers is right about here. I agree with him, and there's some ways I agree with her. committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethical, or ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group's conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. That'll be important later on. We'll get to that. Forcefully transferring children of the group to another group. Based on the definition by the UN, Israel is committing a genocide of the Palestinian people. So it is about the intent. So Piers Morgan is correct there. I know she's looking for a number. I know we've had maybe a different definition of this before in the past, but the present day definition is about the intent. Let's continue on.
I'm talking about what the definition of a genocide is.
But what I'm telling you is that would be incorrect, because the majority of Native Americans died from smallpox. It was accidental. Some 90% of the Native Americans that lived here died from smallpox, and it's considered a genocide.
No, I understand. I'm telling you what the definition of genocide is, which is not about a specific number in any circumstance. It's about an intent to target and eradicate a whole people based on their ethnicity.
I'm disputing that by telling you that they legally say within America that Native Americans, a genocide was committed against Native Americans. Factually speaking, 90% of them, 90 to 93% of them died from smallpox. So it was actually an epidemic, right? So is the definition shifting? Because it is my understanding from Rabbi Barclay that the definition of anti-Semitism shifts. So maybe the definition of genocide has shifted. But
yeah,
well, let me read you. Well, let me
genocide.
Well, let me read you the exact.
School,
let me read you the exact wording and see whether you.
And it's not even just in whole; it's in whole or part. So for the people who say, "Well, no, there's still this many Gazans left," that doesn't matter. It is about the intent. So it doesn't have to be the entire group; it can be part of the group.
I think it applies to. Well, let me read you the exact. Definition of genocide from the Oxford English Dictionary: the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. So by that definition, do you believe that is what's happening to the Palestinian people and it's being perpetrated by Israel?
Well, I would say is that Israel has proven in the past that they can be very specific when they want to get somebody out, whether that's a hostage or any other certain military operation. And what I am seeing happening, forgetting the specific language of a genocide, is something that I'm using my platform to speak out against, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me what the media calls me. I've had every headline. I do not believe that they are being careful in what they are doing. I think it has been it seems to me that the destruction of the hospitals and the schools and of the UN buildings. Would you say, Piers, that you believe that's unintentional?
I do not believe Israel's waging genocide. I think that
you believe, but I'm asking you, do you believe that the targeting going room to room in the hospitals is intentional?
I'll be clear with you. I can answer the question. I have said repeatedly in the last few weeks and months that I think the proportionality of Israel's response is now unacceptable. And particularly since they decided to go into Rafah, a refugee camp that they set up to then target Hamas in the middle of a refugee camp where you're bound to kill so many innocent civilians in the process, I think is unacceptable. But I'm just curious, given.
But it's not just about what's happening in Gaza. It's also about them expelling the people from the West Bank. It's not just about what they've done to the Palestinian people in Gaza. But did you guys notice Candace didn't answer that question, whether or not yes or no she feels it's a genocide? Right. So you can't just base this off of what happened after October 7th. You have to look at the whole history of what has happened with the Palestinian people and Israelis in that particular region of the world to see that the Palestinian people have been treated this way for a very long time, to see how they've been forced off of the land. And then you can understand and then you can see it. But if you're just looking at it based on what happened October 7th, it's like, well, people can come up with all kinds of things and say they're making targeted strikes. They didn't mean for this to happen. That's why you have to look beyond that.
That you tweeted about genocide and no government ever has a right to do it, whether by your calculation from that definition, what Israel is doing is deliberately killing a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group.
Yeah, well, what I can say to you, again, because these definitions shift, I don't think we need to focus on the word because I'm telling you what I believe. And my belief is that they are not being careful whatsoever. My belief is that there has been too much loss of Palestinian life.
But that's different to genocide, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but okay, that's fine. We don't need to. That's what I'm saying. I don't know why you're like obsessing over this one word. It doesn't matter.
Well, because you tweeted about genocide.
You told me.
I'm only trying to clear up
what is about Brian Mast. So you're harping on this issue. There's a lot more topics we should talk about. I'm being very clear in how I feel about this issue. The Israeli government is not being careful in how they're dealing with this. I agree with you that the amount of death has been completely unacceptable. When I tweeted that was back in November. So we're talking way more lives that have been lost. And that tweet was about Brian Mast. So I get it. Now, here's my reason. I never imagined the amount of dead Palestinian children that I would see on my X feed since then.
It's horrific.
You know, it's heartbreaking to me as a mother. It's horrific to me that the media seems almost complicit in the dehumanization of Palestinians. And I will not be on that side because at the end of the day,
we're going to pause here. We're going to back it up a little bit. She's right that the media is complicit in demonizing the Palestinian people. She's correct about that. But the media has also been complicit in demonizing Black people. And sometimes Candace was a part of those conversations. See, this is the thing. Again, if you can see that the media is demonizing Palestinian people, then you should also, as a Black woman, you should also be able to see that the media has also demonized Black people. And some of the times you were there, you were present. Look at the way the media demonized George Floyd or any freaking Black victim of police brutality. Look at how the media went back into their background, their history. I forget the boy's name that the police came in Minneapolis and they bust down the apartment door with a no-knock warrant and they shot and killed him as he reached for his phone. Look at the way the media demonized them. They go back into their background and their history. He did this, and oh, we see he may have had some trouble in the past. And oh, they say that he was a troubled kid or, oh yeah, he may have a record or whatever. They do that the way that they treat those kids. I'm not talking about adults. I'm talking about children. So they demonize Black people too. So again, that's the thing. If I spoke to Candace Owens, I would ask her, why can't you see that about the media when it comes to demonizing Black people? You're not a part of Daily Wire anymore, so you ain't really got to hold the line unless you don't want to say that to your audience. So this is something to think about. This is something to think about. And for Trevor, in this interview, Candace is right. I'm sorry. Did I say that Candace was wrong? No, I didn't. You seem like a simp. Seems like you're attached to personality. What I am saying, though, is that the writing's on the wall. It's very clear. So if you can see that these things have happened to the Palestinian people, where was this same sympathy and empathy for Tamir Rice? The way the media demonized George Floyd. Where's that same empathy? That's my point. Now let's go on, because she has a point here about Piers Morgan, which I think is right on.
The hit pieces, the name calling, the anti-Semitism, the psychopathic language that seems to be coming out of people means nothing. And I want to make sure everybody knows this, right? At the end of the day, you are going to have to account to God for the things that you allowed, the things that you were complicit in, and for the things that you did not have enough courage to state.
Okay.
The amount of death of Palestinian children has been unacceptable, full stop.
Okay.
Bibi Netanyahu, in my view, should not be given an invitation to Congress. I think it's unacceptable.
I agree.
Unacceptable.
I don't
and
think
to be clear, for whatever the reason,
shouldn't be leader
when
of
it comes to
Israel.
the topic of Israel, it does seem that journalists are fearful to critique Israel.
Well, I'm not
now,
at
why
all.
is that?
So-
Because I would say, Piers, that you too, you seem a little fearful to critique Israel and to want to always seem that you're coming across a little bit understanding of everything they're doing. What is it that makes journalists, corporate journalists,
okay, let me respond.
fearful of saying,
Can I
like,
respond?
hey, you know, Israel has done a ton of things that have been very wrong.
Yes, and I have
Money and being blacklisted. In fact, I'll show you why Piers Morgan has this issue, if you want to see for yourself. You know, this show, these debates that Piers Morgan does, they used to be a part of Talk TV. As you notice, they have moved over to Piers Morgan Uncensored show. Piers Morgan, and this is his own Instagram, but you can see this for yourself. Piers Morgan is sitting here next to Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch, this is the gentleman that owns Fox News and owns Talk TV. Now, he said, my boss, Rupert Murdoch, is retiring from running his companies. A day I never thought would come. He's been such a bold, brilliant, visionary leader whose audacity and tenacity built a magnificently successful and influential global empire. So this is Rupert Murdoch. I believe Rupert Murdoch is also a billionaire. So again, this was Piers Morgan's boss. Rupert Murdoch is also a Zionist. So people have to connect the dots here. Again, that was Piers's boss, not his friend, not his pal, but his boss. And you can see a little bit further here, even in the Financial Times, when the shift happened from Talk TV to Uncensored, Piers Morgan's change of program hits Rupert Murdoch's TV dream. And we can go a little bit further down here. Just the first part here. From next week, Morgan will no longer do his nightly show on the Media Moguls Talk TV channel at all, and will instead post Uncensored on YouTube channels, listen to this part, owned by News UK, a subsidiary of the Murdoch family's News Corp. So even the show that he is on now, Uncensored, Piers Morgan Uncensored, is still owned by Rupert Murdoch. So does everybody understand that? Rupert Murdoch is a Zionist. He is the one that owned Talk TV. He also has this Uncensored show by Piers Morgan. He owns that as well. That is a part of the Murdoch family News Corporation. So, case in point, Rupert Murdoch is still Piers Morgan's boss. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, Piers Morgan is owned by Zionists. That is why he is afraid to critique Israel. That is why he has the position that he has. And I don't know if Candace looked this up or not. I looked a little bit into, what is happening behind the scenes there. But that is why he has the position that he has. If you want to know why, all you have to do is follow the money. Then you'll see why some of the commentators say what they say. You can't say this about me because I'm independent. I'm independent. I don't belong to Rupert Murdoch. I don't belong to any of these people. I don't have any sponsorships, no brand deals on this show. So there's a big difference. Let's continue on.
I have said they're wrong. I think Netanyahu should go. I think half of that cabinet should go, because some of them have definitely been using genocidal language. I think a lot of what Israel's been doing the last few weeks is completely unacceptable. But ultimately, I also, from the start of this conflict, believe that Israel not only had a right to defend itself after the terror attack on October the 7th, but a fundamental duty to its people. And here's where I'm just curious about your tweeting through this procedure, this whole war, because on October the 7th, you didn't tweet anything. You didn't tweet anything on October the 8th. And October the 9th, you tweeted, so much world peace ever since we got the orange man out of office. So glad the adults are back in charge. A lot of people say, well, if you care this much about innocent people being killed, why didn't you say anything when 1,200 people were massacred to death in the most brutal, barbaric manner in this awful terror attack by Hamas, and nearly 7,000 more were wounded, some of them catastrophically and irreparably? Why did that not compel you to say anything?
Well, first and foremost, Israel's a foreign country. So typically I talk about topics that have to do with America. Secondly, you're only quoting my Twitter feed. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. I also had a daily podcast in which I did respond directly about what happened and called the events horrific. Multiple times, said what Hamas did was absolutely horrific. So you're using a snapshot of my Twitter feed where you're acknowledging that I didn't tweet for days to suggest that I didn't have anything to say about what had happened. Now, to be clear, I am consistent on all matters. I do not want America involved whatsoever in anything that is happening in Israel. I don't want my dollars sent over to Israel. We should not be supporting Israel. Obviously, Thomas Massey has done a lot of work showing how it doesn't even make economic sense that we have so much debt and yet we're sending money over to support Israel. And the biggest issue, by the way, that I have with Israel in talking about them being above reproach is the fact that they are supplying the arms to murder Christians. Okay. In Armenia, the oldest Christian country in the world, and yet nobody talks about that. For whatever reason, it seems to be the circumstance that when Jewish people die in Israel, it's wall-to-wall coverage. But when Christians die all over the world, nobody talks about it. Everyone wants to correlate everything to World War II. Everyone wants to talk about Adolf Hitler, and rightfully so, he was a horrific person. But nobody wants to talk about Henryk Yagoda, right? Nobody wants to talk about the Bolsheviks. Nobody wants to talk about the Christian Holocaust. I am tired of the media, exhausted of the media not speaking about what is happening to Christians all around the world. And it is especially horrific while at the exact same time that it is happening, the slaughter of Christians in Armenia, the arms being supplied by Israel, that the media turns the other way and says, oh, okay, but what about what's happening in Israel? So you know what I'm asking for? Actual equality. Okay, because it seems like this is like a special category, the special relationship that we have. I'm a Christian first, okay? And so my concerns are going to be with what's happening to Christians all around the world, because it is us. We are the #1 most persecuted religion in the world. And all Christians watching this need to realize the time is now to start speaking up, because we have been silenced about the things that are happening to us for a very long time. And the media is very clearly not our friend. When there is wall-to-wall coverage of Christians being killed in Armenia, Christians being killed in Nigeria, and the treatment of Christians in America and all across the globe today, then you ask me if I will use my platform and I will use my voice to speak about what's happening in Israel. How about that?
Let me pause for a second because I'll show you the numbers in reference to the Christian persecutions that she's referring to, but I can answer part of this question already. Number one, a lot of people don't talk about what's happening in Armenia because there was an Armenian genocide. So a lot of times people forget about it. So there's that. Number two, she mentioned Nigeria. Most people are not talking about what happens in African countries at all because they're African countries, and most people in this world don't care about what's happening to African people, whether they're Christian or not. That's why you don't hear that many people talking about the genocide in the Congo. Everyone's bringing up what's happening in Gaza, and we talk about it on this show as well. But over 6.5 million people have been killed in the Congo. Over 6.5 million people have been killed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo so that we can have rechargeable batteries, so that you can have a cell phone, so that you can plug your computer into the wall, any rechargeable battery for cobalt. So there's that. Again, nobody cares about it. How many people are talking about what is happening to the Haitians? Right? So I talk about those things again. Most people are not talking about it. We just spoke to a journalist a couple of days ago about Sudan, which has now become the largest humanitarian crisis in the world. What is happening to the Sudanese people? Most people don't talk about it. So it's not just about Christians. That's the thing. It's not just about Christians. There are certain countries that people care about, and there are certain countries that they don't care about. Now let's move into these numbers because I want to show you what she said about Christianity. She does have some truth here. Christianity is the world's most persecuted religion, confirms new report. I'll give you some of the numbers. The group Open Doors USA figures that 360 million Christians last year lived in countries where persecution was significant. Roughly 5,600 Christians were murdered, more than 6,000 were detained or imprisoned, and another 4,000 plus were kidnapped. In addition, more than 5,000 churches and other religious facilities were destroyed. So she does have a point, and I've seen multiple sources about that. So she does have a point about that. But it's not just about Christianity. And that's what I wanted to bring home there. We are going to fast forward to this piece here when they get into the issue about Kanye West and a little bit about Rabbi Shmuley, because I thought this part was important as well.
Clearly anti-Semitic. When you say I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, that is a statement of anti-Semitism, indisputably. The idea that you would be dishonest if you didn't see that for what it was, whatever the circumstances, whatever was going on behind the scenes, for a guy with his massive following, which I think we can agree was indisputably massive at the time, for him to state that in public on a social media platform was a brazen act of disgusting anti-Semitism. And
you're talking about Kanye West,
right?
Just to be clear, I didn't tweet on Parler. I, on my podcast, gave a full statement saying that if we're being honest, you did not think that he was going to go kill some Jewish people. You didn't. And I think that if we're being honest,
well, you said if you're an honest person, you did not think this tweet was anti-Semitic. I did think it was anti-Semitic. Everybody did.
Okay.
But you didn't. Why?
No, because I knew the backstory, so I had more information than the public had.
Yeah, but the statement is unambiguous. The statement had no clarification. It was unambiguous. It was clear.
Yeah, and then when he clarified, when he did try to clarify it, nobody paid attention. So can I ask you, why did you try to book Harley Pasternak after you saw what he tweeted to Kanye?
No, I booked Kanye himself, and I interviewed him for 2 hours.
Yeah, but were you interested? That was thereafter when he showed the tweets of what Harley Pasternak said to him. Were you outraged by the idea that a Jewish man would threaten to drug someone so that they couldn't see their family? Were you out? Is that outrageous? Is that anti-black? Do you think that that's racist?
Well, whatever the circumstances of that wasn't.
No. Piers, answer the question, because
you're
quick to say that a threat that you perceived, the language of him saying that he was going to go DEFCON 3, and just to be clear, DEFCON 3 is a defensive military position on some Jewish people, or Jewish people as a whole. I don't remember the exact tweet. You just said that you felt that that was clearly anti-Semitic, and now I'm asking you, is it clearly racist? What is it clearly when a Jewish man says to a black man, okay, that they're going to drug them out of their minds, effectively MK Ultra them, and your visits with your children will never be the same? Because if you're asking me between the two, which is worse, it's obviously what Harley Pasternak wrote to Kanye West, which was not reported in the media.
Because he didn't put that in the tweet.
Okay, but Kanye tweeted it. Kanye tweeted it publicly. Harley Pasternak
did after the furore blew over his original
but why
tweet.
didn't it trend? Why wasn't there the same outrage?
He didn't talk about one Jewish person. He talked about Jewish people.
I am asking you why the public was not as outraged as when somebody threatens to drug someone out of their mind. As a very serious, real threat. And it was the same person, as he said, was the person who first put him in the hospital the first time.
Right.
You seem to be okay with it. You're just sort of like, well,
no, of course I'm not okay with it.
His tweet was so much worse. You're talking about taking away somebody's kids, putting them into a hospital, and drugging them out of their mind. Where is your outrage?
Well,
and that's a power move too. So she's referring to the doctor that Kanye West had. Apparently there were some threats made there from his doctor to Kanye West, allegedly, about taking away his children and I guess over prescribing him medication or something like that. It's really interesting because I wonder if the roles were reversed. Let's pretend that it was, a black doctor, and let's pretend that the patient was Jewish, and those things were said. So to the point there that Candace makes, I think, there would have been more of uproar about that. There would have been more angry people about that. But because it was the other way around, I do feel like most people just didn't care. They were like, whatever. Also, is the fact that Kanye is also a celebrity. So a lot of people just, when celebrities come forward, a lot of things, a lot of times people are just like, whatever, you're a celebrity, you're rich, deal with it. But she has a point.
I do not know the background to what you're saying.
Why does it seem to be that is always the circumstance? Like whenever
Candace, with respect, you are deflecting
about how they're being threatened. No.
For some reason, you don't want to.
Piers, this is very important. Let me finish this. This seems to be a trend that I have recognized. I saw this with Rabbi Shmuley. For 2 years, okay, this rabbi openly threatened me, my family, my livelihood. Him and his daughter did this for 2 years. There was no outrage. None. Zero. In fact, you booked Rabbi Shmuley, didn't even ask him about it. Did you threaten again? And then all of a sudden, I do nothing. And the full media is accusing me of anti-Semitism. Why does there seem to be this double standard that specific Jewish people, if they want to, can threaten the lives of Black people, specific Black people? I'm giving myself as an example. And there's not the same response. Like, why wasn't Rabbi Shmuley trending for 2 years over what he said about
I don't really, to be honest with you.
Because we are not in a position of power, Candace. I can answer that question for you. because we are not in a position as a group. We're not. Someone mentioned it in the comments earlier. I started because I wanted to come back to it. Harley Dude said, the reason Black people don't have anything is because there is no PAC for us, while a foreign agent has whole army of American Jew lobbyists. So this is important for people to understand. We don't have that type of an organization that has that type of power in Congress or in the White House or in the political space at all. We do not have that type of pull. That's the reason why we can be attacked like that. And we don't have, if there's some type, you saw the attacks when people were saying anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. And you saw how the swarm of bots and accounts just came after people who were supporting the Palestinian protests and were a part of those protests. You saw the way the swarm of people just came after, all these different accounts came after Bree for saying what she said. There's a whole network to this. There is a whole Zionist network. All that someone has to do is send out the call and they all come after you, attacking you left and right on social media. And ultimately, one of the goals is to get you fired from your position, which apparently is what happened to Candace Owens and what happened to Breonna Joy Gray. But the reality is, it is okay, or society feels it's okay for you to be attacked by people like Rabbi Shmuley, for him to smear you and come after you, and for Zionists to come after Breonna Joy Gray, because as I said before, we as a group, as a collective, are not in a position of power in this country. People can take that however they want, but it's a fact. There are certain individuals, certain Black individuals that are, but as a group, we are not. As a group, as a collective, we don't own anything. And I've tried to explain this to people. So this is important for people to understand. And that's why a lot of them are not coming to your defense. The people who did not come to Bree's defense is because, again, we are not looked at the same way. And that's why I get angry when people like AOC tried to do what she did, and she tried to both sides the genocide, and she was talking about anti-Semitism and started adding in all these other groups to try to make everybody feel comfortable and to be on point. No, we do not have the same struggle. We are not treated the same. We are not in the same power structure. We don't own anything. And everybody has to get that. So when you as a group, since there's no AIPAC for Black people, there's no power behind us. There's no swarm of bots or swarm of accounts on social media to come and defend us. That's a big part of the problem. That's why you'll see the racist attacks that are on X. Even now, people are still calling Breonna Joy Gray the N-word on Twitter openly. And it's just going around and around and around and around and around and around, because no matter how educated you are, no matter how much money you get, you will never be seen the same as them. And you have to get that. And this is why I was told to tell people who say they want to live in a colorblind society. The reality is we don't live in a colorblind society. And there is always one group that looks down on another. You may not do it that way as an individual, but it happens. If it were the other way around, and it was Candace that had been doing that to Rabbi Shmuley for 2 years, she would have been done. Ask yourself why that's okay. Let's go on. A little bit more here.
We're going to come to Rabbi Shmuley, and I might share a lot of your views about Rabbi Shmuley, but the point that you seem to be wanting to move on from and deflect from.
I'm not moving on from it. I'm telling you that I had more information.
Your response was to Kanye saying, when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people.
Piers, you've said this 3 times, and we've talked about it 3 times.
I know, because you don't want to answer the question.
I told you the reason why I said that is because I was aware of multiple people in his life that were doing something. There's no point in belaboring the point. I've answered your question.
I'm simply
you cannot
asking
accept it.
I'm simply
You've
asking you,
you've
when you
simply asked the same
say,
question 3
if
times.
you are an honest person, you did not think this tweet was anti-Semitic. You're saying that I'm dishonest because I believe what he said was anti-Semitic. And I think that's ridiculous.
I am saying that, well, first off, just to start back at the beginning of this interview, I think you're dishonest for a lot of other reasons. So please don't, harp on this one tweet. But yeah, because you flip-flop on your positions the entire time. That's the reason why I tweeted those things about you. But I mean, everything. COVID, you flip-flopped on COVID. You flip-flopped on BLM. At 1 minute,
Then they get into that discussion, which was actually pretty interesting too. Make sure you watch the rest of this interview, guys, because we can't really get into the whole pandemic thing on here, but that is also a really good part of that discussion. It shows you how Piers Morgan was wrong on some issues and how he went flip-floppy and all that kind of stuff. So she did call him out. I'm glad that she called him out for him being afraid, obviously, to criticize Israel the way that, and he has been. And I just showed you why, because of the money connection. I showed you why. You can see who he's connected to. And a lot of people probably thought that was his show, right? How many of you thought that was just his show? No, I just showed you. This is still a part of Rupert Murdoch's network. Now, the reason why I bring up that it's not just Christianity, let me pull this up here, is because when it comes to the Palestinian people, you have to understand, again, there are Palestinian Christians, there are Palestinian Jews, there are Palestinian Muslims. Not all Palestinians are Muslim. That's just, a failed belief that a lot of people seem to have in the United States. That's actually not the case. And everybody doesn't have the same rights. So there's that. But then there was the situation with the Ethiopian Jewish women. Now, again, these women were Jewish. So let me show you what they did to them. This is why I say it's about ethnic cleansing. It's not just about the religion.
I'm not familiar with what they've done to the children of Yemeni Jews just yet, so I'm going to start with what they have done and still do to Ethiopian Jews. We can start with forcing them to be on birth control. This is the use of the Depo-Vera.
And I'm sorry, guys. I don't know why TikTok videos, the volume is so low. But what she's saying here is birth control shots forced on Ethiopian women.
And it is likely to prevent more births of Ethiopian Jews. In the United States, we've done similar things, but it's usually forced hysterectomy for Black and brown women, particularly African American women and Native American women. We can talk about how Ethiopian Jews are not able to emigrate to Israel at the same rate or same frequency as Jews that come from Europe or from the United States, from Canada, white Jews, really. In the United States, we do this all the time. Most recently, when the war in Ukraine broke out, Ukrainian refugees were able to cross the southern border when people seeking asylum from other countries in Central and South America were not. And then something we're all too familiar with is racism in policing. So this one here is from Vice News 3 years ago. It's part of a larger documentary from them that's about an hour long, and it talks about the racism that Ethiopian Jews are facing in Israel. And this piece here is about the police violence against young Ethiopian Jewish men.
Yeah, so this is the part that I wanted people to see, and I'll just show you the little short article in case you had difficulty seeing that. It is very important that we make the connection from foreign policy to domestic policy. So the money that is being spent abroad for these wars, that is money that is not being used for domestic issues here in the United States. So people have to make that connection. So there's that. But then there's also this, when we were talking about what happened to the Ethiopian Jewish women, I just want to pull this up here for you, because I don't know if everybody knows about this, but I covered this on my show. I think the first time was 2 years ago. So we've been talking about this for quite some time. It is not just about what's happening to the Palestinians in Israel. So this one, Ethiopian women in Israel given contraceptive without consent. By the way, what you probably could not hear in that video because of the volume is that was still happening also in 2023. This was still continuing. So it says here, again, against their will, Israel's health ministry is investigating claims that Ethiopian women are being injected with a controversial contraceptive without their knowledge or consent. Thousands of Ethiopian women are said to be receiving shots of Depo-Provera every 3 months in Israeli clinics. The contraceptive stops menstruation and has been linked to fertility problems and osteoporosis. So that was the Ethiopian Jewish women that were given contraceptives without their consent. This is why when people make the argument and they say it is just about religion, I call bullshit, because those Ethiopian women were Jewish. You can listen to the rhetoric. You can watch the videos, you hear the language, you see the things that are said. They want the people gone. And it's not just the Palestinians. There was a video, I can't show it on here anymore, it's really bad. But there was a video where it shows Israelis actually calling all these Africans that are in Israel, calling them the N-word. They were experiencing police brutality in Israel as well, just as Black people experience police brutality here in the United States. They were saying they wanted them out. They said they were proud to be racist. This video footage has existed for years. I showed it on this show years ago, and it is now resurfacing again on social media because of what is happening in Gaza. But that wasn't even against the Palestinians. That was against the Ethiopians, and that was against some of the Sudanese people. Those people were Jewish. Don't believe me. Look up Al Jazeera. They covered this for years. And the Ethiopian Jews, the ones that they wanted out, they were proud of their religion. They were proud to be Jewish. They were happy to be Jewish. But again, this goes back to the ethnic piece. So this whole all Jewish people are welcome here, and this is a place for all Jews, apparently not. I have gone way past my time. Way past my time. Let me get to some of the comments. I think the interview was good. Guys, watch it. It's like an hour and a half long. It is a good discussion. I think she really did nail Piers Morgan on a couple of things. But yeah, I mean, for me, I would just ask Candace, again, why can't you have that same sympathy and empathy for the Black community? Tim said, Candace baffles me. How can you be so right on Gaza and so wrong on the Black community? Thank you, Troy. Saudi petrodollar just ended. Thoughts? I'm going to talk about a little bit about that tomorrow with Mark Sloboda, because we're going to touch on a little bit with the Moscow Stock Exchange choosing not to trade the dollar. So we'll dip into that. Thank you, Cloudness. She got her, we can't say that on here, wake up call. Too bad. Kick rocks. Thank you, Grapeseed. Your work is so necessary in 2024. Thank you. Thank you. I know myself. Yesterday it was George Floyd, and today it's you, Candace. I remember when something similar to this happened to Omarosa too. I remember that. Tremaine, time to tighten up the community. Thank you, TS. Definitely a free speech issue. Yeah. And even if you don't agree with me on this issue, next time it could be an issue that you do approve of. And your speech is trying, they try to silence your speech. So you never know when it can happen to you. Thank you, 72 Marsh Flower. Both theism and atheism require beliefs, as neither are falsifiable. Falsifiable. Falsifiable per scientific methodology. Thank you. Thank you, DC. Religion is the opiate of the masses. Karl Marx. JB Font says most of those Black people murdered by police brutality are her fellow Christians. Where was she then? But I ain't gonna say nothing, JB. Thank you, TS. Sabby, I watched the entire interview. I love how Candace chin checked Piers. He always interrupts his guests who don't agree with his narrative. Candace is blind to Black struggle. But that's a choice. It's a choice to be blind to Black struggle. Thank you, Wanker Tanker. Israel government officials have stated intent. Disease travels with war. Thank you, Grape Seed. What was the intent in Tulsa? We're going to be talking about Tulsa tomorrow. I'm going to talk about that. Thank you, Goba. Regarding Colorado, anyone who can forsake her own race in the racism debate just to get rich should never be trusted. Go Sabs. Oh, regarding Candace Owens. I thought you meant Colorado. Thank you, DC. Crusade/Inquisitions killed more Jews than Hitler. Thank you, 72 Marshmallow. Original Christian here, a source, liberal/collectivist. Candace means to say the true evangelicals, not the fake ones of the United States. We're rare. Oh, we're rare, but we do exist. True pro-life is all life. Just Z says, but what about Christians who demonize other spiritual practices? These are all good questions. These are all good questions. Thank you, Courtney. Mavs will win game 4. Sorry, Sabs. You think so, Courtney? The good thing about me live streaming at 1 p.m. tomorrow is that I get to go watch the full Celtics game again, just like I did Friday. I'm not going to the game, but I get to watch, get to watch it. Thank you, Leprechaun Alley. Aside from the audience, I wonder if it's also about resentment towards her own and herself. I'm from South Dakota, raised religiously, plus a culture of high rates of SA. I was terrified of WC men and didn't find compassion until 30. I am so sorry to hear that, Leprechaun Alley. That's interesting, though. I've never been to South Dakota. Thank you, Dre Harden, for the super sticker. Thank you, Leprechaun Alley, for this one. The one thing I always think about is that World War II Germany still got its way and emptied itself of many Jewish individuals. It almost seems like Germany did win. It just never has set right. Yeah, that was another thing I brought up too. Like, why wasn't there land in Germany that was dedicated to the Jewish people? Because that is where, these most of those atrocities happened. And it seems like to me, yeah, you're right. They just kind of got away with it. Like, okay, whatever. Thank you, Dwayne. Ashkenazi European Jews putting the Z in Ashkenazi since 1947. Thank you, Phyllis. Oopsie. Thank you for your very important and powerful voice. Thank you very much. You are welcome. Let's get the comments on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Hey, Candy, stop weaponizing race to defend yourself. Don't you know the U.S. is not a racist country? Oh, funny there, Roger. Now go wear your White Lives Matter t-shirts. Okay, Sabrina, you asked for it as you were talking. I was compiling a list of things that she said against our community over the past decade. Seeing that you are itching for that interview and I can't stop you. Whoa. I never said that. I never said I wanted to interview her. I never said that at all. I said if I were to speak with her, which could be done in different capacity, I would ask her about that. Okay, but let's continue. So better to prepare you instead. Prepare for battle. Okay. I'm assuming Roger probably sent that to me via email. Anyway, guys, I am way past my time. Tomorrow, we will try to jump into the Texas ballot measures. Now, these are the results from 2023. We have 2 states left, Texas and Wisconsin. And then we will start the ballot measures for 2024. So I bet you'll be quite excited to see what's going to be on your ballot this year. Dun, 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 dun. All right, guys, I'm heading out. It's way past my time. Have a good night. Oh, don't forget tomorrow, live 1 p.m. Eastern time. Keep up the fight.